You don't need it.
Oh,
No.
gosh.
Tell me when, Dan.
Yeah.
Oh, it's not? No.
You good?
I don't believe it.
All right, I'd like to call to order the special meeting of the Board of Finance for Wednesday, March 15th. We'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, do we have any public comment? Hearing none public comment, we're going to start in with our budget deliberations. We did not meet last night due to the weather, so we're going to try to fit everything in as much as we can tonight and figure out tomorrow night as well and move forward so we can finish in the timely manner that we need to meet the charter guidelines. So with that, not going further, we'll start with the police department, if you all don't mind.
Okay, so we followed the format that we were presented with for the recommended slides. Listed our accomplishments since last year. We did successfully fulfilled the SRO requirements that we were presented with last August after the budget had already started. We completed our second phase of the mandated drug testing. That the mental health wellness checks for all the officers, that's in the Police Accountability Act. That was budgeted. We began Tier 1 accreditation process, which was not budgeted. We hired an outside accreditation consultant to get us through Tier 1, which we will be evaluated on that next month. We completed, thanks to Sarah Palma and Matt Donadio, the record storage upgrade in our storage area and freed up some much needed space downstairs in our old bulk evidence. And we were able to kind of keep up with our fleet replacement and rotation program. We're still at the whim of the manufacturers for getting us vehicles. The Armed School Security Officer program took us as long as I thought it was going to take to get somebody on board, and he is on board at the high school. So our key performance indicators are the same: community service, crime rate, resolution rate, safety in public, and utilizing the resources that we have. Some of the key performance indicators, this is a new slide this year. So for 2022, the major reported offenses were 347 compared to 294 last year, 250 in 2020, and 319 in 2019. The arrest rate was pretty flat for the last 2 years, and then it was down a little bit in 2020, as were our calls for service. Calls for service last year, you could see the beginning to rise again. We are averaging about 1,000 plus calls a month. And they range from alarms to significant investigations by our detectives. Some of you may have seen the recent article in the paper, and that was a couple month long investigation for that drug bust. So one call in that 1,260 calls for service could be a couple months, and it could be a few minutes. Hardships. The state mandate, unfunded mandates for the police accountability is ongoing with our accreditation needs. It's not going to go away. Each year, up until 2026, we have when we get to phase 3, and then after that it becomes a maintenance of the accreditation standards. So at some point we're going to have to get somebody in full-time versus just having a consultant on board. Difficulties in hiring. It takes us, once we get somebody hired, it's 6 months in the academy and then about 4 months of field training. But we're having a difficult time, as are most of our neighbors, with finding qualified candidates. What used to be a pool of 100 to 200 has dwindled down to double digits, and of the double digits, when we do like 20 or 30 evaluation or interviews, we wind up with, if we're lucky, after doing the background, 1 or 2 candidates. So we're having difficulty in it, and that's across the board with, like I said, with a lot of our neighbors throughout the state. Contractual salary increases, overtime coverage for the schools. That's not something we planned on. Like I said, that was after the budget was already approved last year, and we were told that we would have an officer at the school all the time. And to date, we're out of money in our overtime. That's primarily due to that. And then some of the one-time purchases, which were capital requests in the past, have all switched to subscription-based multi-year plans, and they moved to operations. So we didn't have a lot to ask for in the last 2 years for capital, and that's not because we don't need stuff, it's just because it's moved to operations. The aging police facility, which in the capital request for the 10-year plan, we put in for the building again, and when we get to 2026 in our accreditation phase 3, where the current building is not going to pass, we're going to have to either spend some significant money to get us to meet accreditation or look for another solution. Effects that these are having on our budget, there's been a almost 45% increase in training costs, 4.37 increase in salaries, and 13.59 increase in building maintenance. The goals that we hope to achieve with this current budget and this current year, meet all the department requires for Tier 2 and Tier 3 for the Public Accountability or Police Accountability Act. Meet our staffing needs, filling vacancies caused by retirements, and upgrade to the townwide communication system that we have been working on for the past several months, working with town to try and secure additional grants. Effects these hardships have on our current budget, the cost of training new officers and special assignments such as SROs and accreditation, overtime expenses caused by the vacancies and union obligations. Other budget items that need to be addressed. We just talked about the facility replacement and capital request, and the proposal in our capital for the vehicles was to increase and meet our traffic complaints with the reinstatement of our dedicated traffic officer with the motorcycle. How to get to there, thinking outside the box. Police facility upgrades versus a replacement. Additional staff to address the growth in the town, and how we can find some efficiencies in our through or unconventional thinking in the facility replacement using existing town properties. That's just one thing, and then to start to implement the consultant recommendations or impact study, which is going on right now with the emergency services. And you have our budget, so. Some of the major changes before we have any questions, and Diane was very good to prepare this. There was increases in line 53-914, which is abandoned vehicles. We added $1,000 for towing charges. In line 54-301, building maintenance, we increase the building maintenance for painting to $5,000. And we're working with the town on switching over for our cleaning services to one janitorial service versus
What line was that, Chief?
54-301.
Okay, that 5,000 was, okay, put back in, okay, yep, all right.
And the janitorial was, I don't know how much of a savings it's gonna be, but I think overall to the town, it might realize the savings if we're on one service versus multiple. I can't tell you where that is. I don't know where we're at with
Jules is still working out.
okay. 5419 was maintenance equipment, and there was some increases with our CAD, which is TriTech. The software maintenance is now all-in-one renewal, which includes a recent addition for the computer aided dispatch for fire. Axon, which is body-worn cameras. The line includes 2 new cameras that were purchased under the school security program. So that was the increase this year for that subscription model. Last year, we got the money out of ARPA for the 2 additional cameras, but it's a subscription model. So the in-car video line was included 13 cameras under the current contract and 2 additional cameras initially purchased under the school security program, and that was ARPA funds as well. The additional 2 are co-termed with the original 13. Once the cameras are installed, the ARPA school security will pay $34.94, and then the cameras will be on the original contract for the next 2 to 5 years, which overall added a $5,990 for a total of $38,425 for years 2 through 5. And that's all in that one line. That is it's just cleaning up some of the math that was in there. The additional total station, which is the mapping that we use for fatal accidents, and Secure Watch was not included in prior budgets. We were taking that out of miscellaneous funds to cover these 3, and now they were tied up to an appropriate line item. In line 55-300 communications, we added $4,000 for cell phone tracking for the Detective Bureau investigations. That was something we found out that in our investigations that we now had to pay for after we started doing it. And we added the $600 for the that's the Dinglebrook. It says Maryland B. Over agreement. That was the tower on Dinglebrook that we pay rent on. In vehicle maintenance, which is 54-910, we added detailing of the dive team bus, which we spent about $25,000 on 2 years ago, and we also spent money to build the Marshmallow garage over it to protect it, and now we're just trying to make it last. And we also added emissions testing for our vehicles, which we took out of parts. Is that right? Parts?
I'm sorry.
In prior years.
Yeah.
And we would use petty cash for the transactions, but now it's tied to the appropriate budget item. Office supplies, 56-100. We added the youth officer and the community affairs team both request increases in their budget. We're participating in the cadet program for young high school age students, and it's a new item. He's also asked for a slight increase in the National Night Out funding. And Economy Printing sent us a letter indicating an increase. Advertising in 55-400. There's some legal notices that we need to post for accreditation. There's some charges that we have for advertising, and there's a couple things in there that we're required to do, and I'm not sure why the requirements are in there, but they are. Line 56-100 under patrol equipment. We took the Axon Taser replacement line item out of equipment maintenance, which was
It's
31,000.
100, that's office supplies, 105 is equipment? Is that would be?
56-105
Yeah.
Would be equipment.
patrol equipment.
Patrol
Yeah.
equipment.
Yeah, okay, I thought you said 100, that's
Okay,
what,
sorry.
my bad.
Um,
So what was in that line, 56-105? Have you got one item in there that's a big item, that's a one-off?
We took the Taser replacement line item out of equipment maintenance, which was 31,000. And then we put I thought we took that drone out.
No, we didn't.
Okay, there was a request for the dive team for $2,700 for the drone, an underwater drone, chairs, and some other equipment.
So that's like a one-time purchase,
Yes.
2,700? What other one-time purchases you got in that line item? That'll last you a while, not an annual
Oh.
purchase.
Just equipment when they're on calls,
Yeah.
chairs and
Well, he already has the
Yeah.
drone.
So 2,700 you said,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
What else you got in there?
There was chairs and some other hats and stuff like that, $200.
Yeah, that's minimal. Is
Yeah.
there a big chunk in there, anything in there that's a one-time chunker?
Nope.
Right.
Line 56-107, which is photo IDs. This is, you want to address that, Salamander?
I think our conversation with Karen was that we're just gonna not, we'll just leave it the way it is.
Yes.
So it's a non-item at this point.
Okay. 56-116 was technical supplies. There was some minimal increases for traffic reconstruction software, which had not been included in prior budgets that we were already using, and we took out of miscellaneous to cover years past. And some $600 for storage supplies for evidence, and boxes we use for the drugs that we take in from the public and destroy. And we had been taking those out of office supply in the past. And we added a dispatch replacement chair to the budget. The chairs are used 24/7. 2 chairs that we have in there are coming out of warranty and going to need to be replaced over the next 2 years. So we added one in there. We just did a bunch of work to 2 of them. But like I said, they're not like chairs like these you can use. They go 24/7.
Yeah.
57-340, we put in there, that was in technology. The police car MDTs are coming out of warranty and the batteries are commented to be replaced. So we put in for battery replacement. Line 55-800, which was travel and conferences, traffic reconstruction courses were prepaid this year, and that was under the guys that was under recommendation from Marcia to ensure that we can get into the class, even though the class is going to be after July 1st, right?
Yeah.
They're August, right?
Yeah, but we had to get those guys into that class, so that put $7,665 in our training budget. Some of the other required classes are DUI and interrogation classes. This added $3,000 to training. The tuition reimbursement, which is contractual. Currently, we have 2 officers that are taking advantage of that for their degrees. And the specialized training offered by the post, the academy no longer offers any free classes. You have to pay for every class that you go to, thanks to the change in the state way of doing things. And then there's also the private training classes that you take. So there's been slight increases in those. And just as a general comment, many of the line items increases are due to vendor increases. Some of this stuff is contractual and cannot be reduced. The budget we presented here is basically we're maintaining what we're doing. That's it. There's nothing real new in there. The only thing new we were trying to do was with the capital and add the motorcycle for traffic enforcement, which we have been not able to dedicate somebody to, and the complaints keep coming.
But you've come up with somewhat of a game plan for that, correct?
Yeah.
What would be the game plan? Like buy used, is my understanding?
Yeah, so we had asked for the one vehicle replacement, which was the motorcycle, which was on the state contract, and I don't know what the exact number was, but the replacement, if that was to be cut, we were gonna try and get a used police motorcycle to get us through. We're already gonna send the officer to the training, and last year we tried to do it, we had a hook in with training. Training wasn't gonna cost us anything, but we were unable to secure a motorcycle for the training.
And you have a cost for that, right? Rough cost for the used one?
Pretty useful.
No, we don't have that yet. It's about half of the cost of the new.
So in your outside police fund, I think you have, what, $117,000 balance right now? We generally try to keep that at 100. So there's 17,000 there that you could possibly utilize for that. Would that get you through what you need to get through?
Yep.
Would that make you happy leaving this table? If we could do
Yes.
that.
I'd like to have a new one, but this would meet the needs.
So, I think, go ahead, Brianna, you can talk about the capital side of this. Brianna can't talk about the money side of this due to a conflict, but she could talk about it from the capital side.
Maybe like the half of it or.
No, about what was in the capital plan, right? I mean, the
Right,
capital
well,
request.
originally there was a new one,
Correct.
and then because we were trying to make numbers work, we felt that, you know, they needed to, police cars, and we just felt like that was one thing that we weren't ready for, the officer wasn't trained. We went back and forth, and then my thought was is potentially easier to get a used one, which is less money. It would get the officer through training. It would help with the community policing so that people would see the bike out on the streets. They would see that the traffic is being enforced, and it does work on smaller roads. So it would definitely complete the circle in what they're trying to do. And it is hard on some of the roads. It is hard on some of the roads, obviously. So I work with other police departments that have motorcycles, and they use it for community policing, and it's wonderful. It is a really good thing. So a used one is a lot easier to come by, and you can use it until they don't find a need for it and get other officers trained on it. And then, you know, you can always trade it in. It's just like there are motorcycle dealerships everywhere that will take a used PD bike towards a new PD bike.
I think our original request was 37,000
Yes.
in there.
Right.
It's
I think there's
37,000.
one, right, that half of that would be 17,000,
Yeah.
say, for the outside police fund. That'd still keep us at the 100,000 that was sort of agreed at to keep that fund, outside fund that, so in case there was an emergency. So, Dan, your thoughts?
Sounds good.
Ryan?
Great solution.
So.
Do we still have the other vehicles in the?
Yeah,
Yeah.
no, we're not
Yeah.
taking.
Okay.
Nothing.
You're utilizing your outside funds, right? You're gonna come to the first select woman with your outside fund request
Mhm.
for this.
Yeah,
If that's
please.
gonna help you out and get you through some of these hardships, is that gonna help you out?
Yep.
And then part of what we had talked about in this budget process is, we're gonna look at your reverse contingency, because in the past that had run in a direction favorable to the town, so we're gonna move that from like 75 to 100, we talked about that, still backstopping, we'll have you. And then we talked about looking at your overtime and maybe making a reduction in that area. Again, if you need it, you would come to us, but as a line item, we're gonna look at reducing that and talk about reducing that. And if you need that, you'd go through the special appropriations. We'd have money on the contingency side to cover that.
Correct. The only concern I had was that we have a meeting next month, or next week, quarterly meeting with finance to see where we're at. We're gonna have to make another request for a interdepartment.
For your overtime this year, right?
I think, yeah, and I think, I'm hopeful that it kind of, we can work out some of the problems that is causing us to have this significant overtime issues, and that in doing so, we shouldn't have a problem maintaining the contingency increase.
How about,
And this is,
go ahead.
this is Marcia. We did talk about when we first set up this ARPA money and stuff, that we knew it would take some time to get people in place and that there would be overtime. So when we talked about that originally, we said we would help them out with some of this overtime from the ARPA money.
How about, well, I'm gonna throw it out. How about you keep us safe, we'll we'll cover your overtime. I mean, you worry about keeping us safe and let us worry about the money. I mean, if you're managing your overtime and you're staying on top of that and you're doing the best you can to keep that under control, right? I mean, I'm speaking out of school here. We'll cover, you worry about keeping us safe, we'll worry about the money. So your overtime is your overtime. We had situations come up this year that weren't planned, that we put into operation to cover some overtime. That's not to hold you guys accountable. If you're managing it and you are the police command, you put in what you need to the first select woman, and then we'll appropriate to cover it. Marcia, we got some good news from the Board of Ed on their this year's overages or planned overages. So if you're managing it, then manage your overtime and we'll support it, right? I think that's something we can't get away from. And then like we talked about, the 25 to 25, and we'll cover that. And then if you come up with your special appropriation for use of outside fund for the used motorcycle, you could probably start doing that in this year's budget. That's in your outside fund money.
Right.
You don't have to wait till the budget cycle. Because I think we would approve it at our end. And then we would look, the reason why I was asking for the one-time funding is when we get to the end of this budget, we may have a little bit of money left over of one-time use money. So that's why I was asking not to cut your one-time, but if we could find $10,000 of a one-time purchase to supplement in to reduce your budget. Because that's not an annual cost. You'd see,
Right.
if you had a box that cost $10,000, was a one-time use.
Right.
We could maybe take that out of your budget this year and reduce the taxpayers' burden.
Paint?
Could do the
Oh,
paint.
you're not gonna get very far with $5,000 for paint, have you gotten
No.
an estimate?
And that, yes, we got an estimate, and it was, I wanna say it was 13.9 to basically do the whole building, except for the locker rooms, the garage, the sally port. It would do the holding area, the detective bureau. It wouldn't do the dispatch center or the sergeant's office, because those rooms need some, they need more than paint. They might need some,
And how long does that last? When's the last time the building was painted?
It'll last a while.
No, it's, yeah.
We saw it. Brown.
It's all brown, so
One
whenever.
decade is good. We'll
I
get a
mean,
decade out.
if we're gonna get a new PD in 10 years, then maybe we
Get
don't
a
wanna
10-year
spend
paint job.
13,000 on paint. I don't know.
No, I think that'll be worth it.
But actually, facilities was kind enough to start working on the hallway downstairs, so they were jumping in to help out. And the improvements from the outside services request, which was the records project, that got the hallway painted, it got all the rooms painted. So we, we're doing it a little bit at a time.
Any
It's
questions,
easy.
any questions for us then? Do we have any questions for them?
I just
Go
had
ahead.
a couple. For the communications with the radios, is any of the radio project going to cover some of that cost depending on the timing of it? Or like for the townwide radio system, there's 20-something $1,000. Is any of that included in the radio project that we've already?
I think that there was ongoing maintenance in there for the radio system. Then, no, because after the radios are purchased, I'm pretty sure that
It was
we're
like
spending that
18
right now.
last
It
year.
may go down if it's
Okay.
for maintenance of the radio system, because right now we're having to buy, the problem is everything that breaks,
Yeah.
we have to buy a new part, or they have to find this part somewhere. And,
Yeah, that's what I heard.
so it's not being supported, so that, what went from a quarterly visit, maintenance visit, has become monthly, sometimes weekly, so.
But we're on time and material with this, there's no parts, there's no warranty. But the new one would most likely be, there'd be additional annual costs and or insurances, options to buy packages that will cover it
Yep.
every bolt,
Yep.
but they're also considerably more expensive and probably would bust the budget of the year.
And the only other question I have is, you mentioned some of the SRO training. Would the ARPA funding cover some of that as well, instead of it coming out of your budget, since the ARPA funding was meant to cover the SROs?
There's only one thing that they have to require for the training, and that's usually held in August, when there's no school session, but I'm not sure which line you're talking about as far as.
It was mentioned in the presentation.
But the 58-100, is that right, the travel conferences? and
Yeah, I
training?
think that was it. You mentioned that there was ARPA funding for the new, there was SRO training that was unexpected.
That included, yeah, I'm not sure, 100% sure which, that there is required training for them,
Yep.
and it would be covered. I'm pretty sure we put in for that, in the overall package for our, the other additional stuff, there was $3,000, but that was for department-wide, for like DUI requirements,
Okay.
and interrogation classes. Right now, the state has a lack of qualified roadside sobriety for drug impairment. So some of the requirements just to get certified for that are weeks-long training, and it's not in state. So, and there's only about,
DRE?
yeah, the DRE, there's only about 50 some odd. There's some proposals to change that requirements, but it's pretty expensive.
And that's a mandate now. I believe that everybody can come out.
Yeah, they took a statewide survey for needs, and they felt that if you had another town nearby that had a DRE, that was sufficient for now, and it doesn't mean that they're working or.
Can I ask a question similar to that? With, if you do pursue the motorcycle through the outside services fund, is the training for that program in this line?
We're doing the training this year.
Okay.
Yeah, it's minimal cost.
I also believe that you had said that there was 2 of the trainings that were free. I think they said, I remember when you guys were
It's like
presenting-
$200 now.
Yeah, oh, okay.
Yeah.
I remember when Chris was presenting, he had said there was like 2 different ones that were,
There was,
They were
but
very minimal.
we missed
you missed those.
because we didn't have the bike.
And then what is your outlook for the city's fund growing? I know it's tough.
As soon as it started getting warm, I mean, they started working on Federal Road again, so I
Right.
think, Matt was looking into that, but usually it's around this time of the year, the significant increases, and it just goes up all summer, so I think, and Marcia might be able to pull that up for you at some point, but I think that consistently, this was the low. And then
Yeah,
it-
absolutely.
yeah.
Yeah, we
Yeah, I
usually
think they
bottom
said-
out right this time of year and then it grows again, absolutely.
April 15th, they're supposed to start back down on the lower end of Federal Road there with the traffic light by O'Connor's and the rest of that work, so and we've already been getting calls to go to other towns. It's common.
Perfect.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you guys.
No problem.
And ladies. Good stuff, thank you.
Thank you.
If you have any other things, reach out, please.
Thank you for being so flexible.
Oh, no
You know,
problem.
Mother Nature.
Yeah, storm that didn't come, but
That's all we were
Don't
saying back
get
and
me
forth was, watch, I'll go to all this trouble to reset everything and nothing happens. That's what.
I went to
we were
the
talking
range
about.
today up in Torrington. As soon as you get past the Milford, there's snow all over.
Everywhere.
I'm
Yeah.
like,
It's,
did
it
I
was
just
the
go to?
weirdest storm.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
crazy. But have a good night.
Thanks,
My friend's house in Vermont.
Really?
My parents in Stanford got free
Saw my
insurance.
email
My mom's like, how did
to
you not
the,
get that?
grant language.
I got none.
yes.
I put a couple things in there,
In my
but
yard.
it's like it repeats.
It's gone in my yard. Do you
Yeah.
have snow?
Yeah.
If you have snow on Cove Road and I don't have snow in Hiddenbrook, I'm throwing in the towel.
But the question, it looks
Stop
like it
it.
repeats like you had already answered it.
We're on
Oh.
video too, just
Yep.
be careful what you're saying, we're on video.
Ryan, he's right there. You go. You're up, dude.
I'm here. Hi, Chief. See you in the morning.
Welcome Kendall,
Hi, guys.
Mr. Ryan, Chief Gary.
Mr. Chairman,
Hi, Ryan.
how are you?
Great, how are you doing?
Good.
Hey, Gary.
Wow. Dan's laptop is a brand new one here.
Don't break it.
I think we're working on like
That new
Windows,
budget?
Windows 95 on this thing or something. Sure. Did you do that? No, Chief, not with this list. Damn, what year's this laptop from?
2 years old, 3 years old.
We're on video, Ryan.
Oh, it's one of the video ones.
We're on video, Ryan.
It's okay.
And once we have this up, I just need to share it off to Zoom because we have Marcia remote. So
Oh, I thought I heard her voice. I thought maybe she was
yep,
here.
we have a few people on through Zoom.
Like, let me fill up my water cup.
I don't like seeing it. It's weird.
Fill up my water cup.
Let's get started.
Oh, good, because I don't like seeing it. It's weird.
You just get your presenter feed.
I'll wait for her.
No, go ahead.
Are you sure?
I'm sure. Go
All
ahead.
right. So ours will be not as long tonight, so I'll get right into it. Accomplishments since last year. Some of them have stayed the same since the year before. Still navigated the difficulties associated with COVID, and our call volumes have continued to increase year over year. We designed and put into service, thanks to you guys, a new Chiefs car. Several members completed outside training courses. I want to touch on that a little bit. So as we progress, so does our training requirements. So our officers have now had more stringent state certification courses that they're, I won't use the word required yet, but encouraged to take. So the chief himself has completed his fire instructor class, which was a prerequisite to take his fire officer class. So our officers are trending in that direction to take more officer type classes rather than just the initial classes we used to take. And again, thanks to you guys, we completed our window replacement project. Special news items, if any, we obtained a $33,000 FEMA grant for state certified training, which has helped offset some of our training money. And correct me if I'm wrong, Chief, but headquarters is actually using part of that money too. So we obtained it, but we were able to share it town-wide. The key performance indicators, call volume has increased, and we continue to meet the needs of the community and maintain a high level of efficient and cost-effective services. Major hardships, increased call volumes, and increased cost due to inflation. I'm not saying anything that I'm sure no one else, every presentation hasn't said. You'll see in our budget, our major drivers, our budget increase were our increased utilities cost, our increased insurance cost, and our increased supply cost. Insurance went up $8,000 this year on itself. We are working to hopefully reduce our electric cost a little bit. We're working with Jules on that, so hopefully we can a little bit. We did go to an alternative provider, but our costs were still going to be about $1,000 a month. Specific goals: continue to support our mission, respond to the increasing needs of the community, recruit and retain new members as we develop our future leaders, and we continued our training budget, which was offset partially with grant this year. What we need to continue to support our capital plan. So our capital did move through. They took out the paving on the parking lot across the street, which we are completely fine. We're not trying to fight to get it back. We are good with putting it off. And our apparatus replacement plan, which is actually part of our capital plan, which was fully supported. So we're in good shape there. And I don't like that slide, so I'll never fill it out. I always say that we do think outside. We are the thinking outside the box. So we think outside the box. We do apply for grants all the time. We have a radio grant application out right now, which we see what we get. But other than that, our budget went up 16-ish%. No, 8%. I'm sorry, which is only $16,000 total. So our percent always looks much bigger than the actual dollar value went up. It was driven by those three things I said: electric, insurance, and just supply costs and fuel costs. I'm sorry. Other than that, I'm open to any questions.
Do you see in the future, you were talking about as you guys grow and get more training, do you see that becoming similar to like what the police are going through, like an unfunded state mandate where you guys are going to have to be mandated to be trained in a certain way, and do we need to think about that?
Not
for the
nearly
budget?
to their level.
Okay.
Not nearly to that level.
All right, perfect.
We would have a couple people a year taking outside training.
And it's not
No.
a big
No.
dollar.
No.
Okay.
We could probably maintain it right with our operating budget as it stands. So.
And I've got no more questions.
The insurance, do you guys bid with headquarters to kind of?
I believe we use the same. So we use an insurance broker, I guess is the word, who then bids it out. There's not many providers for fire.
Okay, that makes sense. Thanks.
And we go through it with her every year and have to fill out a survey to make sure. But we also don't have a lot of claims on it, so it keeps our costs reasonable. But the one last thing I want to touch on, not that any of you are cutting on the list, so I don't really need to argue anything. But we are. So I showed $16,000 increase. It's asked for $3,000 less this year than we spent last year. So we had spent about $19,000 of our own money last year because we were doing some projects on the firehouse, and we always expect this cost. But so it's actually a savings if you want to put it that way over last year. Any other questions? All right, thank you guys.
Very
Thank you.
easy. Very easy.
Enjoy your next presentation.
Who is next? Library?
Library, but
They're coming out of the
center is tomorrow.
Christina was right there.
Yeah,
Oh,
someone from the
she's-
library, I believe, is here.
I don't know if anybody else.
How we doing, Frank?
Bye, Tara.
Good to see you, Ryan.
Our meeting's tomorrow, Chief, right?
At center. That's what Andy was telling me. Feedback. Oh. Is Christina here? Or
Yeah,
is
she was
Cindy?
just
Oh,
outside
okay.
there.
'Cause I was gonna say otherwise.
Then I'm gonna drive.
Yeah, that's fine. I
Then
didn't
we'll
know if
drive.
you wanted to drive now while we were waiting, but if
No.
she's here, then
No.
we're good to go.
Hello. Join us.
Hi. We coming to the table?
Yeah.
Please.
So you guys are ready?
We are. We're ready.
Sorry.
Thank you, sure. There's a friendly face. Yes, you are too. Stop.
Hello, how are
We
you?
see you more than we see Sue.
Great,
right?
thanks.
I mean,
I still think you should have brought the tennis ball.
Well, welcome.
You okay to be over here?
It's fine, Sue. It's all right, Sue.
I'll wait to you.
that one, please. I think it's up on the screen.
Yeah.
You want to just start with that?
Start with whatever you want to
Whatever
start
you
with.
guys
Go
want.
ahead.
Don't worry.
Are we gonna wait till 8, or do you wanna just?
No,
do it?
no,
Okay, I didn't know if anybody, I didn't know if you were waiting for anybody else.
Just keep moving right along.
I just wanted to be nice and late tonight, that's what we did.
We
Definitely
are
not.
gonna be late tonight. We are gonna be late tonight.
We are, but you don't need to be.
Good.
No, I just didn't know if anybody else was coming.
No, you're it. This is your show right now.
Okay.
It is.
All right.
Carrie, you have one?
Anybody here?
Okay.
Okay, so, thank you for having us, and I'm happy to have the opportunity to go over our budget with you. I didn't actually create the budget, it was created by Tracy Waking, who, as you know, resigned in January, so I get the pleasure of just giving you the background and the detail of it. And Christina will probably jump in at some point too and add any details from the board perspective. So,
For the record, I just need to state publicly that I'm going to be recusing myself from operating budget conversations with the library. Can carry on. Sorry about that. I should have said
no,
that.
that's okay. So, just to review some of the accomplishments from the last year, we're still recovering from the COVID years, but our program attendance, both in person and online, has continued to be very strong. People are back in the library. It's great to see lots of kids and families, and we've had some very, very well-attended events, particularly just in the past few weeks, so that's been really nice to see. One of the highlights last summer was that we received state funding for a 3-day traveling makerspace that we had at the library that was very well attended. That was a grant from the state of Connecticut, the Connecticut State Library. So that was exciting, and we're always looking for those kinds of funding opportunities. This past year was the first fiscal year, or the year that we're in was the first fiscal year that we've been fully open since COVID. So again, we're just very excited to be getting back to some sense of normalcy. We went fine-free in September, which follows suit with really libraries across the country. We're finding that imposing fines on people for late fees is really a barrier to access. That means that if somebody, has $25 in late fees and they have to choose, do I pay my late fees or do I put gas in my car? They're gonna put gas in their car, or they're gonna put dinner on the table, and that means they're not able to bring their kids to the library to get library books, to work on homework, to use computers. So that's been like I said, a library movement that we were happy to join, because it really does help people take advantage of our services. We also implemented a new library calendar and registration system. So this is the interface that you see when you come onto our website and you want to sign up for a program. Our old system was just a plug-in on our library website, so it was very, very basic, and it didn't have a lot of functionality. So if somebody canceled a registration, they would have to call the library, and we would have to manually take them out of the system, or if we had wait lists, we would have to keep them on paper and then call people and add them to the list. So we got a new calendaring system that automatically people can go in and delete themselves if they can't attend a program, and then it automatically fills with the next person on the wait list. So that's been very helpful and has freed up some staff time so that we can work more efficiently and not have to just do this paperwork and tallying and stuff. And our strategic plan that the board has been working on is nearly complete, and we look forward to implementing that later this year.
When did you start working on that?
Oh, it was pre-COVID. The board started working on it, yeah. And then, I think it was April of 2020 that we were able to call people together. We had a great group of people. It was DTC, RTC, there were people from across different groups in town. It was really great. It was really wonderful. Yep. I just want to touch on the fine-free thing really quick. When that was first presented to the board, it was because there was not going to be a software that would collect fines anymore. So the state is moving that way as well as the country. And I don't believe the next update to the software, the library software, will actually collect fines.
So just in terms of some data and key performance indicators, our new library card signups are way up. We had 139 new cards added in September alone, which is more than double a typical month. And that's really the result of some of the other librarians and myself making school visits to Center School, Huckleberry, Wisconsin, and the high school, and getting library cards in the hands of all those kids. Our total circulation of books and other media was over 93,000 items. We had 37,000, almost 38,000 library visits. That's people who came through the door. And I'll be fully transparent with that. That number is actually low because we had some problems with our door counter that wasn't functioning properly, but 2023 is on track to probably be close to double that number. You'll see that on another chart. We had over 6,000 reference transactions. That means people coming to our reference desk and asking for research help or information that has to be looked up by one of our librarians. You can come in. Total number of computer sessions, 2,400. That's 2,400 people that came in just to use our public computers because they don't have a computer at home. And Wi-Fi continues to be a big draw, to over 10,000 sessions where people either came into the library or very often they're sitting in the parking lot when we leave at night.
Really?
Sitting in their cars. You see it all the time on nights and weekends. People just pull in and sit there and they're on their keyboards or whatever, using the Wi-Fi. We had a tremendous summer reading program last summer. We served 388 kids, and they came to the library 752 times in the span of our 6-week summer reading program. We work very closely with the schools on the summer reading program so that we align with their goals and we can report the number of kids and visits back to the state. So that helps the schools and it helps us, serve the needs of kids.
Of all these numbers, how many of them can you track who's from Brookfield?
We don't track visits. The public library is open to anybody, just as any public library is open to anybody. So these, we really don't know in terms of people coming through the door who are Brookfield residents. We do have numbers of circulation, number of checkouts that come from Brookfield people versus other towns. And I don't think I
I
brought.
have something. When you get done, I'll put up something to validate it.
I don't have that
outside.
number, but I think it's
Here.
about 75%.
Here's graphs versus you versus other towns of attendance, where Brookfield is very high on the attendance.
Yeah, I was
This
gonna
comes from
say,
the
but
state
that's-
library site. You can go to a state library site and compare any libraries in the state to Brookfield, and it shows you the program. So to validate your thing, your children's program and attendance views per capita was higher than Southbury, Monroe, Newtown, Bethel, and Fairfield, and New Milford.
Yeah.
Significantly higher.
Yeah,
It shows every statistic that you're putting up here, this website, you can compare to any library. So just letting you know, we do our homework and it's important
But it
numbers.
doesn't dictate who's from where.
But
Like,
it tells you the usage across the whole state. You can go against the whole state, usage per capita, Brookfield is getting used. The
But
library,
we can't tell how many of those people are from Brookfield.
it's getting
But
used.
circulation.
We know it's getting
Yeah,
used.
Circulation is Brookfield resident.
yeah, you don't have that borrow it report with you, do you, that I sent?
Oh,
I think it's
may,
about
actually.
80% of the items checked out with a by a Brookfield resident are about 80% of everything that gets checked out. And then we do have other towns that come in, and New Milford was a high percentage in the last year because their building has been under construction.
Yep.
But we actually receive funding from the state for the number of transactions that come from other libraries, so that's a good thing. New Milford, Danbury, there were some Southbury on that list, some New Fairfield.
But typically, we've always been a borrower. We're always borrowing from other town libraries. So it's more Brookfield borrowing from Bethel or Danbury or any of the other libraries
Because
in
our
surrounding
collection is small.
towns, because we have a very small collection.
Yeah, I'm not trying to, point fingers, or I'm just
No.
trying to, understand which Brookfield residents are attending these things. Like, I know you and I have talked, Debbie, quite a bit, and you say people library hop, and I understand that. I think it's a great thing, but I'm just trying to delineate, like, out of these number of kids, how many are Brookfield residents?
Of the kids
Of the
that
kids,
signed
I
up,
can tell
I'm
you-
using kids as an example of all these numbers.
The kids, for sure, I can tell you, is a really high number because we deliver the summer reading materials to the schools, and they come in with the packets that we give them. There's and then we report back to the schools which kids have registered, because they track it. There's a small percent that, kids come and stay with their grandparents for the summer, and the grandparents ask if they can participate, and of course we say yes, we'd love to have them. But that's a tiny, tiny number. I mean, I want to say like 95% of the kids in the summer reading program, if not more, are Brookfield residents.
So I guess I'm curious about the question, because and I don't know the answer, but what difference if it was 80% residents, 20% non-residents? What difference would it make in our deliberations?
Well, I'm just, if for taxpayers going line by line in the budget to know where their money is going, who's the funding servicing, right? So when people come here to town hall
When we
for-
pave our roads, do we say Danbury drivers are driving on our roads? We should check and text them. I'm just saying,
Or
I
Silver
don't
River
understand the
Greenway. I mean,
question.
How many people from not in Brookfield
Well,
are
when we
using
have
our
patrons coming to
resources?
town hall for services, we're only servicing Brookfield residents primarily who,
Every developer that
Every
comes in here
developer.
isn't from
well, they're
Brookfield?
working for usually a resident or a business owner, so.
But
it's
but
just-
it
I'm
also
just
goes
curious.
it also goes the other way. Like if I can't find what I am looking for in the Brookfield Library, I can go to Newtown and get what I need, and they don't say to me, "You don't live here, you can't come in and borrow this book."
No, of
so
course not.
so it's
I'm
just
not
it's a
suggesting that at all. I'm
reciprocal
just trying to
relationship.
understand
Yeah,
what
no, I understand.
percentage of visitors are actual Brookfield residents who utilize the library. That's all. And I know your door ticker was broken, so it's hard, I guess it would be hard to track. I'm just curious how.
Well, the
you
door
would do
ticker
that.
wouldn't even count if you're a Brookfield resident. It would be
No,
just
but just
people.
for numbers overall of who's actually visiting.
Yeah.
The door counter seems to be working fine. The last, I think think you said November was the last time it was on the fritz, but it seems to be working very well.
Thank you.
Okay. Continue on, please.
I don't know why I can't get this to advance. What am I doing here, Dan?
Leftovers on the right, it looks like.
Okay. This chart I thought was interesting because it really shows you the impact of COVID. So if you go to the far right of the chart, you can see back to 2019, we had over 100,000 visits in a typical year. And the attendance at the programs, children's, teens, and adults in circulation all reflect that high number of visits. When you get to 2020, in March of 2020 is when we shut down, and the number that you see there, the 76,000, is really from July 1st of 2019 up until March 15th when we closed down in 2020. Then 2021, you know, the number plummets because we were basically closed for a good part of that year. So we're building our way back. You can see all the numbers are starting to increase. And as I said, if you see the total visits so far for 2023, we're already over 44,000 visits. So this is comparable to what we're seeing in, and Glenn, you probably saw this on the charts, what we're seeing across the board at other libraries. Same thing, the spike in 2019 and then the plummet, and then everybody's sort of inching their way back. This I thought was interesting to just pull out reference questions because we talked about this before, but we were able to, because of some retirements and a reallocation of staffing, we were allowed to add an additional part-time position so that now our reference desk is fully staffed pretty much 100% of the time we're open. So that means we also redid our layout in the library so that the reference desk is sort of right in the center when you walk in. And I sort of feel like that's an example of if you build it, they will come. So we made space for a reference desk. We were able to add a person there. And you can see from 21 to 22 how many more reference questions we were able to answer by having somebody at that desk. So, you know, we all try to be out on the floor as much as we can, but we're doing programs, we're in meetings, we're planning, we're, you know, doing other things. So we can't always be out there 100% of the time, but at least at the reference desk we have it fully covered and it's paying off. This is a snapshot of our ebook circulation, and I think Tracy talked to you about this last year. We saw a big increase in the use of ebooks in late 2020 and throughout 2021 when people could not come into the library and they were reading books on their devices. So this is one of the drivers of the cost increase that you see in our budget, because last year we had to add $15,000 to our book budget so that we could purchase more ebooks. The typical wait time for ebooks, for some popular ebooks, is up to 6 months that people wait to have access because they were so popular. So I wanted to just put that in there so that you could see why we're asking for more money for that this year. So in terms of hardships, you know, you've heard it before. It's the lack of space that's really a problem. We continue to have, we do many programs every month. You can see by the attendance that they're very well attended, but it's becoming really challenging to just find time in the schedule, in the calendar, where the community room is free. We only have that one room. It helps a little bit in the summer when we can go out and use the patio, or we can use the lawn, and that way we can have 2 or 3 programs running at the same time. There can be a book club in the community room, and the teens can be on the patio doing tie-dyeing, and kids can be on the lawn, doing a science experiment. So we're looking forward to the good weather. There were several inflationary increases this year in subscriptions and e-media funding. Everything, just like fuel and heating oil, everything went up in price. So we are feeling that. Last year when we added the money for ebooks, that came out of ARPA funding. So this year, again, that is what we attribute to the budget increase for ebooks, since the ARPA funding is going away. And then our concert series also was partially funded with ARPA money last year, so this year we have to set aside money in the budget for those concerts. So our goals for the coming year are really to continue to offer innovative programming and events. We would love more space to serve the public and meet the needs of the community, and we are looking forward to collaborating with Parks and Rec and any other town departments to figure out how we can possibly use Center School. Susan, you come in. We really could envision using Center School for some big programs that we just don't have the room for, especially outdoor programs and things where we just don't have the parking space. We had a program on Saturday, an Irish dance performance, and we had about 85 people downstairs in the community room. But we could see cars pulling in as we were getting ready to start, and they had to leave because there was no more parking. So we could have fit more people in the room, but there was nowhere to park. So something like a summer reading kickoff, or our One Town, One Read event, or library card sign-up month, things like that, where we could use space to spread out and have more parking would be really beneficial and help. Also, the Friends would really benefit from being able to use storage at Center School and have their Friends book sale back in the gym, if that were possible. They really can't do their large book sale anymore because it was too expensive for them to have to pay to use the gym when they were using Center School before. And it's a lot of work to pack up the books and put them in the trailers that we store them in, and then haul them over to Center School. So if they could use the space that's there, that would be really, really helpful. So you're well aware of the other big budget item is under the capital budget, and that's the request for architect services for phase 2 of the Center School reuse plan, that $150,000 that we would need to apply for a state grant, and then to do community research in order to eventually go to referendum. And then there are 2 sort of miscellaneous items that we would love to be able to fund. Our outside book drop, one of our outside book drops is really on its last leg. It's been patched and fixed, and stapled and
Sorry.
taped and, you know, everything, and it's really falling apart. That's about $6,700, and then we would love to add an indoor book drop. That's about $2,200. Right now, we don't have a book drop inside, so when people come to return books, they kind of stand there with the book until someone can help them, and they say, where should I put this book? So sometimes that leads to a lot of confusion because people just come and leave books on the counter, and then the staff doesn't know if they've been checked in, or is somebody holding them, or what's happening. So those are just two little-ish things that we'd like to add sometime soon. Down the road, not built into this budget, but I just thought that it was important to mention. In the next year or two, I think we really should think about adding another part-time children's librarian, only because evening and weekends are becoming very popular times for families with kids to come into the library. The children's department consists of me and one part-timer, and on 1.5 full-time employees, we run about 35 programs a month, including 5 story times a week, plus all the other things. So it's tough. We just can't be there all the time, you know. So it would really be helpful to add a part-time children's librarian to do some nights and those weekend coverages, as we illustrated with the reference librarian. If we had somebody there, I think we would really benefit from having the extra person at the times when we can't be there. So, you know, the title of this slide was Thinking Outside the Box, and what should we be thinking about? Well, we always think about how we can collaborate with other departments and share space. We even talk to other libraries to see how we can combine our efforts to share programs. Sometimes, you know, if there's an author coming to town and it's very expensive to bring an author in, then maybe we work with New Milford or Booth Library in Newtown, and we share the expense and do programs together. We would love to have an elevator, so we improve our ADA compliance. You know, the bathrooms are finally ADA compliant, and the entrance to the lower level with the new ramp is great. Another factor or issue with ADA compliance is our website. Our website technically is not ADA compliant because it does not serve the visually impaired the way it should. There's a whole bunch of guidelines about use of color and different fonts that we don't adhere to because we don't have a web designer. We have our head of IT is very talented and can do a lot of things, but she's not a web designer, and she created our website, and you know, it's a good website, but it's not where it should be. So eventually we would love to be able to revamp that. So that's pretty much it. We talked about, you know, using Center School whenever we can, and I know that's part of a larger discussion, and that would require, you know, thinking about things like infrastructure at Center School. Are we going to have computers? Could we use the internet? Will there be phones? I know that's a big discussion probably for another time, but those are the things that we're thinking about. And that's it.
Thank you.
I had another question about attendance and opening hours.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have analysis broken out of patrons by day? I know a lot of the libraries in the area aren't open on Sundays, and some are closed half day on Saturday, so I'm wondering if that increases attendance to Brookfield because other area libraries are closed?
I'm trying to think if there's a report. I don't think we have a formal report of, you know, day by day, which days are heaviest. Angelica's here, right?
Yes.
I don't know if anecdotally you want to add anything about when our busiest times are.
Our busiest times, in my experience, mornings, especially right after story time, up until like from 10 to 1 to 2, there's always people running around. Weekends are very popular. Even Sundays, where we're only open for 4 hours-ish. Like, I haven't worked many Sundays lately, but when I have worked, everyone's there with their kids. And from what I have heard from my weekend staff, same with Saturdays, people really try to get their kids out and reading. And this is the time that they have. They're at school during the week. After school, there's a decent amount of action. People coming off of work, people coming that, again, have their kids that are coming there. And even just today, we had like a good 2 or 3 families that I was like, hey guys, sorry, it's 6 o'clock. I'll check you out if you know, have what you're ready for. And we always do that, you know, we don't mind staying a few minutes longer for people to check out. But I would say mornings, then there's a bit of a lull until like 2 to 3, then there's a rush again, and then afternoons.
Whenever we're expecting bad weather or there's like a long weekend, it's a mad rush the day before. 'Cause yeah, just like the grocery store, people want to stock up on movies, books.
Thank you for that.
I think a couple weeks ago I had to drop the kid off and I had like half an hour before having to come over here for a meeting, and I popped in the library because I knew I'd have Wi-Fi, and I sat there and I think I was only sitting down for about 20 minutes, and seriously about 12 different families walked in the door. Varying ages, kids, teenagers, you know, young families. So I mean, every time I've gone in, it's been very well. But I feel like the library has reinvented itself to meet the needs of the community over and over and over again. Between redoing the children's section, getting the bookshelves that were a better height that the kids could reach their books, reorganizing and how you have the graphic novels tags so they're easy for the kids to find. And I think over and over again, you guys have done a wonderful job with the resources and spaces that we have in making it, you know, meet the needs of our town. So thank you.
Yeah, even being so proactive during COVID to get like curbside pickup and everything, circulation didn't go down that much considering how few hours that you were open. You were really getting the books in people's hands, and people were home and worried about so many things, but if they could relax with a book, that made the time go by nicer.
We got a lot of nice letters from people during that time that said, you know, you guys were a lifeline. So that was nice.
I had a couple of questions on the budget line items. I saw that there was a $15,000 cut on the department-specific supplies, and you had stated in your presentation about the increased cost of overdrive and ebooks, and I'm assuming that that's probably one of the bigger drivers of that. But what would that $15,000 cut impact?
Well, I mean, the board would really have to take a look at what goes into that line, you know, but technical supplies are things like subscriptions, all of our databases, so things like Ancestry and consumer reports and those kinds of things. Newspapers, magazines, so, I mean, I can't really answer that now without talking to the board about it, but that the ebooks was really, like we said, that big $15,000 jump was mostly ebook spending.
Because all of that increase got cut before it came to us, and it was like, well, with inflation, if every single bit of your increase is cut, that's a loss. You won't be able to thrive as spending materials. So, and likewise, The projects and special needs, it looks like it's being cut like over $3,000, and that's all the programming and the
Mhm.
concerts and computer classes and things like that, so,
And there were some places where we went through line by line and tracked actual expenses for this year and were able to lower some line items in the budget. So it sort of took some of the burden off the things that increased, but obviously what we're showing here is the net of that. So we put in actual numbers where we could, where there were savings. Some things did go down.
Alright. If we were to figure out a way to put, say, 20, I'm just doing rough numbers, so like 22,000 to cover the supplies and the software section, and we were to find, say, $10,000 to fund your book drops inside and out, would that be a help to you?
It would be a huge help, yeah.
And then we've all thought about the library study, heavy duty. All of us have weighed really hard on this thing. It's been a topic amongst all of us individually as well. I don't know if any of us have an answer, and that's not putting it off. I just don't know if we have a real answer, and that's honesty. What if we were to propose we find 75,000 somehow and you match it 75,000 out of your reserve fund? Because we got to figure out what to do. Tara has a
So-
meeting tomorrow with Center School. What you're going to do with it, correct?
So I've created a working group, for those of you who are not aware, of the expertise in town hall. That would be the building department, public works, who maintains town buildings, Rochelle out of land use, and the fire marshal, and Dan Caldwell from the school side, because he's intimately familiar with Center School. And we've just done a preliminary look from each perspective of what needs to happen to do a change of use to that building, because once it is no longer a school, there's a whole new set of requirements from each of those departments, and none of that comes with a $0 price tag associated. It's quite costly when you start looking at code to change it from a school to anything else. The only space that we could reuse with no change is the front offices, period. Can't use the gym, can't use any of the classrooms, can't use the kitchen. So, you know, to keep that building open with lights on, heat, not the whole building, but just that space even, there's other requirements like your last study pointed out. There's upgrades that have to be done. It has to become ADA compliant, up to the standard of, I think the new code book was from 2021, so it's like 5,000 pages long. But it's not as easy as just snapping your fingers and saying, here's the keys library, here's the keys Parks and Rec, here's the keys Friends of the Library, you can store your books in there. I had a long talk with Mrs. Mariano over the weekend, and I tried explaining this, that I wish it were that simple to just say, whoever wants a piece of center, go ahead, let's reuse it how we can while we can. But there's much, much more to it than just that. And the cost of all those things combined would be significantly more than mothballing it or having it sit idle. And when we're trying to come up with money to cover a study at $150,000, we simply, from what I understand at this juncture, cannot afford to do any kind of work for a change of use. There's a portion of that roof that needs repairs. There's all kinds of systems that, I mean, I'm no expert here. I'm not an engineer. I'm not a contractor. I'm none of these things. So I'm just trying to reiterate the things that I've learned along the way. But we will be meeting as a group again tomorrow for the second time, just to ensure that I'm tracking all of the requirements that would be necessary to do a repurposing of Center School as it is, or an upgrade, or whatever the language is, to get it up to snuff so that we can use it.
Basically, get up to building code. We have to get it up to
We
building
have to
code
do
for
a
any
change of
purpose.
use.
It all has to get to modern building code. Right now, center school's grandfathered in. So it has a grandfather clause on a lot of codes. Once you repurpose it from the school, like they were saying, we have to meet all the standard codes. There's no bypassing of grandfathers. So that number they're gonna talk about, but that number's been discussed. It could be $1 million up to $3 million. So that's a big number to consider for center school. So again, it's not a roadblock, it's just something we gotta look at as a group, and that's, we've struggled with this $150,000. All of us understand the library and support the library, and I'm gonna show a few slides too. We just don't know how to get there. I mean, part of that was the capital that we showed the other night that we're struggling with. We can manage it, we'll get through it. I mean, I know we have the brain power here to figure it all out, but I don't know how to fund it. One of the things was, like I said, 75,000, if we get through the building, the number's conceivable, we gotta figure out what to do with the building anyway, mothball it or not. Because you had a number that was passed around
To demo.
demo the whole thing. And that number was around 300,000 without hazardous materials. So that's another part of it where, when you're
I
talking.
think that's very low. I think the Tecton report quoted about $1 million, right? Like, $2 million,
Well,
thank you.
that's where we're talking with the town
Yeah.
people as well. So we're trying to, Tara's doing her homework on her side and meeting with people. We've been doing ours, and I don't want you to go away here that it's a no, but I don't know how to, me personally, and I'm sorry if I'm speaking here out of turn, is how do we get to your goal? I don't know how to get there. I personally, I don't.
I think it's about the town's goal. I wouldn't say it's just the library, right? It's about the town's
Yeah,
goal, and it's
absolutely.
about getting people together. And if, if a committee that came together in 2020 said that the best and highest use would be X, Y, and Z, meaning part of it being a library, part of it being park and rec, the next step of that whole process would be hire an architect. I mean, you don't have the expertise, I don't have the expertise, but an architect does have the expertise to look at the building. I mean, if you just bring Center School up to code without thinking about its future use, what good are you doing with Center School?
We're not, that's what.
Right,
that's
yeah.
what-
So if you
you're
bring
missing
in
the
an
point.
architect, yeah, but if you bring in an architect and they can develop plans.
But is that architect gonna hold to the number too? I mean, there's so much complex other than throwing an
Yes,
architect
they
at
would
it.
have to, yeah, they would have to hold to the number.
They
So,
don't.
so what would the architect do?
They would plan what we looked at before, the plan that the architect came up with, right?
Is that the one
It was
Kevin shared,
adding-
or?
It was the one that, I believe Jessely and Cassie Dunn had presented to the Board of Selectmen. But it added on to the building. What we're currently waiting for from the architect for the $30,000 study that we did is to retain the footprint as is, but actually work in the programs of the library and park and rec, the way the Center School Ad Hoc Committee back in 2020 had come back with that plan. So it's looking at that plan and potentially retaining the current footprint. And planning what to do with Center School. If you're thinking about demoing it, that's a big decision. And, as far as
There is
letting
no
it
decision
sit-
made.
yeah,
That's what
no,
you're 3 steps ahead of us in a way that there is no decision made, and it's a big decision for the town. And you're right, the town should decide, absolutely, but it's a big decision, and we don't have all the data to make a decision. We don't know what we're facing. We don't know, like, we get an estimate of 300,000, you got 3 million. We're talking, this is eons apart. This isn't even like, wow, it's roughly this.
Yeah.
So what you're telling me, even from what you're telling me now, is we way need more data. Because if it's 3 million on your side and 300,000 from our experts,
So-
who just talked to somebody that's $5 a square foot who does this for a living, it's $5 a square foot to tear down besides the hazardous materials. So the quote we just got from an expert,
I'm sorry, so the expert that we have isn't our expert, it was the Tecton report that was done for the schools.
I
Yeah,
don't care
no,
whose expert it is,
Yep.
and I'm not being facetious here, is 3,300,000, that number is not like if you said, well, one guy was 1 million, another one was 1.5, another one was 1.2, you'd say, all right, you're in a ballpark that they're all together. This to me shows there's a need for more data. If one side's saying 300,000 One side's saying 3
You
million,
said 1 million, right? Tecton said?
2 million.
Oh,
2
okay.
million,
2
even 2 million to 300,000 is a huge difference.
Yeah.
Is, all I'm trying to say is we need to, I agree with the study, and but we need to get the data done from our side first, I think. We need to understand this.
So understand how much it is to demo the building.
Because
Oh,
your
and
numbers
there's
too.
There's a historical commission aspect to what I was saying before as well. So they have to weigh in and give the approvals, and so I'm sure you guys already know all that, but.
Well, Kevin's actually on the Historic District Commission, but that, I don't believe it's in the Historic District, is it?
It's
Central
not,
School?
but it's more than 50 years old, so it could be
Okay.
reviewed anyway.
I mean, I think the piece that I took away from our capital meeting a couple weeks, whatever week it was, they've all blended, was that, you know, when it comes time to build a community center, library, parks, rec, multi-use building, that we need to keep it within, instead of creating specs to something that, like, this would be the best thing for the town versus this is what the town can afford. And so there's a difference between building a $20 million library versus building, you know, using the footprint of Center School is a pretty enormous build, that's a pretty sprawling spot. But if, you know, to meet the needs, and not just today's needs, but the needs for the future, also for a multi-use building, but within the scope of what the town can do. Because there's not a lot of point in speccing out a building that we're never gonna be able to afford. I mean, we know that we have all the, that meeting showed, we have a lot of big projects that are coming down the road, and we want to be able to bring things forward, but to have some sort of plan that can be developed through a study or whatever that says, this is what we can build that will meet the needs, that's within the scope, within, you know, whatever that $1 million, millions of dollars that we think can fit into the town's capital plan, but.
I'll be bluntly honest, I really don't think you have a no from any of us from the needs or from doing this. It's a matter of how we fit it and what comes first. I don't think there's anyone here that, and I know, Dan, you can't say anything, but I mean, I don't think any of us are a no to figure out how to fund this. It's just the timing thing of how do we fit it to the best thing. We gotta figure out what, you know, the school's been studied by the schools. There was a number done 5 years ago on the schools of what they needed to upgrade it to continue on. They were looking at it through Tara's group of all the people, like I say, $5 a square foot. Tecton has looked at it. Are we starting to chase it instead of plan for it, I guess? And I know the architect is part of the planning, I get it. But what is the footprint that's gonna be left there? What are we gonna have? What are we gonna draw to, the 60,000 square foot? If you do 60,000 square feet, the town's not gonna pass it. That's my opinion. It's not gonna happen. Nobody's gonna pass 60,000 square foot, 20-something $1 million right now. It's not gonna happen.
So the plans that we got from the architect expanded on the square footage that's already there, which is why we went back to them and we asked them to retain the square footage that's already at Center School.
Correct.
So that's what we're waiting on right now.
And you had various pricing. You had up to 15 million for a total tear down and a rebuild on the hard cost, or 13 million.
I mean, I hate to tell you this, but it was higher on one end. But the low end was 6 to 8 million. However, you have to calculate in 21% for FF&E and the soft costs. So that's what we're trying to look at right now, is that lower end.
So
Right.
you'd rather have the building, you'd rather have a blank canvas and start from scratch than repurpose Center as it is, right?
No.
You want to,
I'm sorry. We're asking the architect to go back.
Center School and
Yeah.
upgrade it.
Now, when we say keep Center School, I would like to see what we can do with the footprint as it is. I do believe that we need to knock down walls to actually make a library in there. And part of that is going to be bringing it up to code. And that's the 6 to 8 million plus the 21%. That's what I'm talking about. I'm not saying, you know, we open the doors of Center School and the library moves in as long as the electrical and that kind of thing is good. I wouldn't think that as a town we would want a classroom style library.
No, I understand that, and I'm not suggesting that if we use Center as it is now, that you would move in as a library. I understood you need more space for different programs and some storage. I mean, I don't know what all your needs are, but I wasn't saying that you were gonna move in as a library. So
I was just trying to
look,
clarify,
the
I wanna
town,
make
I
sure
mean,
we're all on the
honestly,
same page.
I like for the town to decide what's gonna happen in the town. I think all of us in this room would agree that we would absolutely love to see a new library/community center, and I've told you this before, but how does the town weigh in? You know, we're gonna have to gauge what the town wants in that location, if anything at all.
I thought that's what the committee
That's-
was, the
that's-
repurposing committee that was done in 2020.
The
was to
Center School Ad
determine-
Hoc Committee,
Yeah.
reuse committee did that.
Was meant to represent the town.
Yes,
So
and they
when-
called in all of the different groups of the town, and they brought in the Boy Scouts of America, they brought in Parks and Rec, they brought in the library, they brought in all of the different groups in town. And that's
And then the
where
town
that,
voted and said, yes, we want Center School
that's
to
not-
become.
No, that's
That's not the way.
no.
All right, let's get back to numbers. quick. If you
So
were to
the
get
town
$10
has no
million,
decision.
if we were to figure out $10 million, you said 21% on top of that. So $12 million, you could do everything you wanted for $12 million.
I don't have an architect on board yet.
No.
I can't make, like,
Whoa,
yeah.
whoa. What I'm saying is, these are the type of numbers that we can't go beyond. So spending $150,000
Right,
on
that's
an
the
architect to go to 20 million isn't gonna worth
You
the
need a
dime.
So wait,
Folder.
let's
You
let's
need
go
the
back to,
number.
what number did you just say?
I don't know the number.
12
I just
million?
said,
Is that
you
what
just
you
said
just
8
said?
million and 10,
Yeah,
you're throwing
yeah.
around numbers at me.
Oh,
and
no,
I'm just listening to your
I'm
numbers.
gathering the numbers, I'm writing
No,
these
no,
numbers
you
down.
just said 6 to 8 million. I
Yes, I
even
did.
said up to 10 million, so where'd you get your numbers from? Because you threw them in
The
us.
$30,000 study.
The $30,000 study
Correct,
gave
right.
us
So
three
let's
different-
talk about that quick.
Okay,
Because I listened to some of that presentation, I was away, but I listened to some of that presentation. I heard 15 million at once, what end? You had like 3 different possibilities. There was
Yes.
one that was a couple million, there was a middle of the road one,
yeah.
and then there was one at 15 million hard cost. Now you're saying, even at the 15 million hard cost, the 21% is on top of 15 million? Would be, so that's even less than $20 million for the whole kit and caboodle, which I don't understand how you're gonna build that 60,000 square feet for $20 million. That's what I said, what are your numbers? Tell me your numbers.
It's 6 to 8
6 to
And
8
to
for what?
12,
6 to
I
8
think
for
it-
what?
for library and park and rec, and that does not include any any additions to the building, right?
But no,
we don't.
but what is that, 6 to 8 million, what does it get us? What are you doing to the building?
Ah.
What are you doing to the building?
Oh, Jesseline, thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, so option 1 is
Perfect.
existing structure plus, actually. It's a complete gut, enclose the courtyards, code upgrades. Everything's going to be code upgrades. It has to be brought up to code.
Okay.
There's no non-code upgrades, right? But it's no reconfiguration of the departments, right? Which,
What does that mean?
not a whole lot. I mean, yeah, like it's a complete gut, but it's not,
It's not a total build out, if I can.
thank you, please do.
I'm Kevin Archer, I happen to be a structural engineer, but I'm on the new library committee. And I also was on the Center School reuse committee.
Okay. So, what's that number?
That's 6 to 8 million,
All right.
plus 21%.
And see, I gotta be honest with you too. Why don't you put the 21% in the number?
That would have been great,
I gotta
that's
tell
just
you,
the way,
I'm
that's the way the
gonna
architect
sell you a car for
did it, yeah.
20,000, but the steering wheel's 14,000. I can't drive the car
Not
without the
buying your
steering
cars.
wheel.
I'm
Yeah,
not
exactly.
buying
I'm
your
not buying a
cars.
library right now. So, yeah, I'm just saying, I mean, give us the number. Don't sales me, sales some shit, but give me a number.
Well, this is what the architect gave us, so it's always going to be plus 21%, and I apologize for that. The option 2 is existing structure plus, complete gut, enclosed courtyards, rear addition, that's where that is. There's a rear addition, and that's 13 to 15 million.
So, we have a 61,000 square foot footprint, and you're gonna put an addition on that
That's 70,
61,000?
that is a total of 70,000 square feet. That's why we went
So I'm gonna
back.
ask another question. What are
Kevin's
you
raising his
projecting
hand.
our
Sorry.
population to be in
It's a
5
fif-
years from
It's a
now?
Oh,
54,000
yeah,
square
what
foot
was the
building.
increase?
Enclosing the 2 courtyards adds another 11,
Yeah,
so it got it to, that was
70.
part of option 1,
yeah, 63,
63.
yeah.
Option 2 was when it was enclosing the courtyards and adding out, so it got it to 70,000 square feet. So
This is why we went back.
We've asked the architect to back off, get back to the 54,000 square feet, and just stick with that.
So,
That's what we've gone back to the architect and requested him to redo his design.
and what's option 3?
17 to 19 million plus 21%. Complete demolition and new construction.
And how many square feet?
Total of 70. This is why we've gone back and asked for the square footage to be retained.
But this is why it's hard to go ahead with a $150,000 study.
Yeah.
Because what are we shooting for? What is the end goal of this 150? Because to be honest with you, 70,000 square feet is
Which is
gonna
why
be
we went
very
back to the
difficult
architect
Well,
to try to
get
retain
through.
the square
But
Go
footage.
ahead, Dan, speak, because it's on footage. You speak,
Yeah.
please.
We're going around in circles, nobody, and we can sit here for 5 minutes or 5 hours, nobody has an answer. Because we just went through the meeting where we're scoping out all of the capital projects. That's gonna take time, right? We need to work with your model, build it out, go through the capital committee for everything. So we're not gonna have an answer as to what we're looking for a study. I think, I'm fully supportive of a study. I think it's very important. But we don't know what we're gonna be studying. So if we can put $75,000 away today, study it for the next couple of months, backfill it with 75 next year, and do a study on an amount that we can all agree on. That seems to me to be the.
How about a match?
We're not gonna do but we're not doing a study now, so,
No.
right.
Right.
But would we have enough information, would we have gotten far enough along in the capital planning for next fiscal year at some point for them to have the time to match and by the end,
That's even better.
I mean, so at that point, if we do put the 75,000 aside, you have, the fiscal year to match and start the study before the end of 2024 fiscal year.
All right.
But then we should have the capital, we should have these pieces that we're all working towards figured out or worked out a bit more.
And in 3 years' time, if we put all that money together, we can have enough money to demo it and have a blank canvas to build a new community center / library. So
If that's what the study.
we're gonna be spending money to keep the building sitting idle. So, 3, 4, 5 years down the road, we're still not gonna be able to afford much of this.
But where are we getting 300 to $1 million to demo the building?
Good question.
In this
Same
year,
way,
anyways.
we're gonna have to look for 150 to get to another study when the last study still isn't concluded. So what are, again, to Dan's point, what is it that we're gonna continue to study when the last study isn't even the final product?
The last study was preliminary. Gave broad options, right?
Yes.
And to
And-
try to inform what we're doing next, and it did, but we don't have a budget to do the next step. But the first study was successful in providing options,
Yes,
very high level.
yes. And we are waiting for one small piece.
Okay.
I think we have enough information.
Mhm.
So, all right. Thank you. Before you go, before the library goes,
Okay.
if I can put my computer and do a little driving.
Oh, yeah.
And here, you can. Marcia, you still there? Marcia? All right, because you're on in about 10 minutes and we're driving hard.
All right, I'm ready.
All right.
It'll be just a second for it to show up on the screen, and as soon as it's up, we
All right. Tara, you asked non-resident circulation, it's 12.57%. This is from the state library organization that does stats. Oh, I just lost it there because I pushed the button. So if I take Bethel, I put in here, that gives you Bethel. I put in Brookfield. Let's put in Monroe.
I can do this on my own if you're showing me personally.
No, I just want to show the town that we do look at things as well. I mean, we're trying to Fairfield and New Milford, we'll just say. And Newtown. So there is somewhere where you can go that has a lot of data on the towns, like the children's programs. You can see the usage of Brookfield versus the children's programs versus the area towns. So there is a lot of different things to look at here that validate the numbers that Debbie has said.
Right, and I'm not debating at her numbers, I'm just trying to get to the heart of the matter as to why we're so busy. You know, what is it, New Milford's been closed for 2 years. We're open on Sundays where other libraries are not. You know,
Here's hours open typically a week. So you can see we're open 54 hours, Bethel's open 58, Newtown's open 62, New Fairfield is 48, so you're right, New Milford's only open 46 hours.
We're busy because the library provides really great programs, the
Oh,
families that,
no
really
denying
care about
that.
education and literacy and bring their kids there a lot.
absolutely.
But you can see here that you can go play with this site and it's a good source of information. I went to it to check on things and to see where y'all are standing. So I just wanted to show that, thank you. We are pay attention to the library, we really do. We try to support wherever we can as a group. I think Dan's right in the study. I don't think you have a no on how to move forward, we just gotta get there together. And that was part of the meeting the other night, was how do we get there together? So I think you're right, we'll look at the capital. We got a model now to play with the numbers so we can see where things fit. Ryan did a great job. You got Brianna and Ryan on the capital committee, along with other shareholders of the town. So I think, you know, they've heard you and we'll do what we can.
Thank you.
And of course, that kind of next study though would help you start applying for grants from the state though.
We can't apply for a grant from the state until we have some sort of plan. And
That was-
Do those
any
usually last 3
fundraising-
years though, once the grant comes through?
Sorry?
Those grants usually last 3 years, you have to use them?
Yeah, you have 3 years to use it, but it's about, I think it's about a year and a half until you actually know that you have it. So you have to apply for it in June and then you have to send a letter of intent in June and then you have to actually apply for it in September and then you receive it in May.
Because I would hate to have it time out again like it did last time.
Yeah,
And
no,
then we had,
no one wants that.
So if all of a
Yeah.
sudden they're talking 2030, maybe capital, it's like, do we, do this study this year or next year?
Yeah.
Like, is that what,
Well,
where does it fall in the timeline?
It's about when you pass a referendum, so when you have, the matching funds from the town.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, Marcia, you ready?
That's it.
That's
So
it.
we don't find anything out, huh?
You can watch.
Yeah.
Tomorrow's gonna be busy.
It was.
Sorry,
Thank
we
you.
have a deadline.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Do you want me to share my screen?
I want you to get on and let's start playing numbers game.
Alright, she's gonna share her screen, I just have to move it after that.
Well,
Either she's gonna share and then she'll walk along in hers, or do you wanna do it the other way around?
no, go ahead, you can take over.
Thank you.
We're not going to do any revenue. Remember, on video all time right now. Okay. I'm just saying, everything is.
For the
Why am I getting more hungry than this? Doesn't even worse than when it's a mini bar.
Good to go.
All right, you ready, Marcia?
I'm ready.
Woohoo!
All right, let's go, health insurance, make it down to 7.1. Please. You're gonna reduce your budget by 72,611.
Yep, that was the number we talked about there, yep.
All right, let's do the fuel, keep it at the 275. I know you locked in at 280 something today. We'll cover that out of the reserve still. We'll stay with that 275 number, cover the rest out of the reserve.
All right, let me put it back up again then.
Is there a locked-in rate
I'm sorry,
cap,
where
or
are
is it a?
Locked in.
What do you have in there right now?
275, we're gonna backstop it.
Okay.
We can move that around later. I just want to get us to a landing spot right now.
We locked it at 286.
Yeah.
And thank you, Ryan.
Okay,
Next year,
all right.
plan for your budget.
All right, let's go to the Board of Ed. Let's give them everything but 25,000.
All right, let's see. Let me go.
So that would be they got a 198 health insurance. They got an 80,000 from fuel. So 25,000. So we got to add back in 97,000 on top of that.
We have running 375 total this Board of Selectmen put back in.
Right.
Yeah,
We're-
so 375.
So the Board of Selectmen put in 100. We're going to put in 303. Put in 303.
Oh,
With that number.
No, not 303.
375.
Whoa, no. We got to make it all net out because their health insurance went down 198.
Right.
So their health insurance went down 198. Their fuel savings went down 80, and they're giving us back 25,000. So they should have a line of 403.
And they're giving us back 25, right? So, am I looking at that right, 97? Maybe I can look at 97.
You got to wait. How you gonna do that math, Marcia? Because I'm lost on my own math right now.
All right, so,
862.
so we were to make, if we were to make them whole, then, then we, if you give me the numbers again for the,
Yes, I know that. So 198 is their health reduction. That's not a reduction on anything. It's just the numbers, right? So that 198 goes away. 80,000 because they're going to go to 275 on the fuel. So 80,000 on the fuel.
286. Oh, you're doing it.
Yeah, we're going to and 25,000 they gave back the other night. They said they found inefficiencies. So that's a total of 303.
all right, and that's where we are.
All right, 97. Okay, they're done.
Right, 97.
You did the 72,611 on the town side insurance. Fuel savings on the town should be about 25,000. Right?
Yes, yes.
All right.
What was that number?
25,000 on the town side.
Okay.
Let's
Mine
go.
was a little bit, mine was 6712 and 17,472 if you want to be precise. I'm a few $100 different than his 25,000, yes.
Leave it at that. at the
Okay.
25. CES mothballing. I've talked to a lot of people on that. I know there's a lot of emails floating around. I don't think we do need the fence, but the numbers they're different in everybody's calculations. I think if we took 20,000 out of that for the CES mothballing.
All right.
Police overtime reduction.
All right.
25,000. Police reverse
All right.
contingency, 25,000, make it 75,000 to 100,000.
All right.
Put in a reserve of what we talked about, what, 375 in the reserve?
What's it? what's the 375?
That's the fuel, just put it in there for now, the fuel and the health insurance reserve that we talked about, out of the 510 from the FEMA funding.
All right, so that'll be this year, so we don't need to put that into next year's budget. You see what I'm saying? That if the 510 came in March, and we would handle that in the current year, so we wouldn't have to transfer over 375 here. Does that make sense?
Yeah, but it's gonna reduce that money's gonna reduce the mill rate if we use it this year. Right? Why wouldn't we put it in a fund for next year's budget?
So tell me what you're thinking, because I was thinking we would have 375 revenue this year. We would put it in to capital non-recurring as a separate reserve this year. But are you saying that you want to have it in revenue this year and then put it in the budget for next year as an expenditure?
I wanna cover expenditures.
Right. That's not gonna be in the budget, that's gonna be as an aside for budget overruns that we have a CNR to cover.
Correct.
So it's not gonna be in this, it's not an expense.
No,
It's not a
it's
revenue,
expense.
it's not a revenue warrant expense in the '24 budget, it's sitting to the side for us
It's
to
gonna,
use.
but we're gonna utilize it for the fuel, the
We're gonna
275,
utilize,
286.
it's cushioned, but,
Right.
yeah, it's cushioned, so, right, so that's the difference between 275 and 286,
All right,
there's no
as
375
long
to put
as
here,
you
right?
guys are on the same page.
Right.
I'm on the same page as Dan.
Well, then that's all, he's a smarter man than me,
I
so
don't
I'm
know
good with
about
that. That, I'm good with that, so, all right. So, where do we stand right now?
All right, I'm just making sure I don't have any other numbers that we had talked about in red here. There were some changes we talked about on capital, and if those go through, operating is 6.55, mill rate is 4.02 if we do these changes on capital. If we don't do those changes, mill rate is 4.4.
4.4 or 4.04? 4.4?
No, 4.4. 4 point, is it
4.4.
There it is.
It's not making sense, Marcia. When we talked about it the other day, we were down to 3 nines. What are we missing?
So we've put money back into the Board of Ed that,
Yeah.
so if we, so that was 25,000. So let me just do this, quickly here. And we put in, you had 44 out of,
Yeah, but that's not gonna move it, the numbers we're talking about. The 40 down to 20 isn't gonna move a number that big. We were down below 3.9. 20,000 ain't moving our needle. We had that reserve in there somehow, and we were talking about it. That reserve came in on the revenue side. We did
so
something.
that's right there is 3.94. If I put in those two numbers, the 25 is the extra amount you took out of the Board of Ed, and the 24, at the time we got to 394, it was 44 coming out of center school, and now it's only 20. And so
Okay.
that's where we got to the 394.
No.
So center
No.
comes out to exactly 394. If I, just plug these
30,000 ain't
numbers, they
moving the
don't go.
needle. There's something not right in there. 30,000 ain't moving at 0.5%. 300,000 is moving at 0.5%.
No. The 4.4 was if I took this 287 out. So it's 4.04 when I kept the 287 in that you were changing on the capital. So the 287, if I keep that in,
Yeah,
then it's 4.02. It was 4.4 if we ignore all the things you had talked about on capital.
no, put
That's
them
what
back in
makes
too, put all that in. Put that number
So
back
keep-
in.
Keep the 287?
Yep.
All right, so now that's 4.02, and the difference between that and the 394 is the 25,000 for the school and the 24,000.
Yep, all right, now you're making sense, thank you.
Okay. So
All right, so we know the reserve is big. We started with the 375 because that was going to cover the bigger differences of the reserve. So we put 375. We talked about that because we thought we were going to have to cover up the $3.30 on the fuel side of this. But now that we've locked in at 286, that reserve can drop down 100,000.
So we can use it for something else.
So that 100,000 could go into the capital. What else can we fund out of the capital, or to fund other things, like Dan just said? So out of the 510 FEMA money, Marcia, what can we use out of the 510 FEMA money then to bring down this mill rate right now?
So what we could do is just pay for something else in capital, out, and this would come down 110 here. So if we went over to capital and if we took out, and said we're going to pay for, let me find something, we're gonna pay for this 100,000 out of,
Yep.
you could call it year-end 23 revenue.
Go ahead.
Or we could call it FEMA. So if we said we're gonna pay, let me find 100,000 and say other. And we're gonna call it year-end 23 revenue, and I'm just gonna put a little note here. Part of 510 FEMA. And then $10,000 more someplace.
Leave the 10,000 alone. So we're good with that.
Here we go. Here, this is 110 right here. Makes it nice and easy for me.
Well, don't take out the other 100,000 up on the top though. Don't double dip.
Yeah, I don't know about, I don't know if you wanna do a reserve.
No, not a res.
I don't know if you wanna play with a reserve. I think you wanna stay there because you'll.
Yeah,
I
leave
think
the 100,000.
it
Take
should
out the
be-
110. Take out the 110.
Yeah, it should be a thing.
That's a
No.
reserve too, though.
Yeah, that's
Is it?
reserve.
Alright.
It's all a thing.
So the only thing that we're paying for in cash in this budget is our reserves and
paving.
The only thing we're paying for in cash in this
Fine, all right.
budget are reserves and paving.
No, that's not getting us anywhere. I'm with you.
Right.
I'm with you. All right. It's all removed,
No.
right? There's still 100,000, right?
Yeah.
It's all removed. All right. Hold on.
So,
We'll find a spot
So-
for that.
I mean,
so
there's
this
little
110, you wanna
things.
put back
Yeah,
to where it
right,
was?
yeah, here you go.
Under the interest.
It'll cover his, what Ryan's thinking is accurate about revenue.
So we look at the two-year treasury now, it's down below 4. Marcia, what is our revenue on our
That's the answer.
interest right now? What are we forecasting? Is it over 4, right?
Yeah, 4.5.
Right, so the two-year treasury now is down to 396 because of all the uncertainty in the markets. We probably should be budgeting in 4, I'd say 4%, I think is a safe. So what does that do to our revenue?
Let me pull up that paper.
And just so everybody's clear, this is much different to 2 weeks ago. We had two banks almost fail, so this is.
All right.
They failed, let's be clear.
Yeah, one failed and one's on the brink, so actually 2 banks failed.
And while I'm pulling this up, if John Lucas is still there, if you want to give an update on our banking situation. which is fine, no problems.
Yeah, no, I can. So the question is, does the town have any exposure to the, this is kind of a sidebar, but I'll be brief. Does the town have any exposure to any of the banks that failed? So everyone knows, our cash, we have an approximate balance, about 50 million at Newtown Savings Bank. We have about 30 million at Union Savings Bank. The 50 million that's sitting at Newtown Savings Bank is in a product that it's, for those who don't know, but it's a way that we get around the FDIC limitation on insurance on your balances. So basically the product that we're invested in, Newtown Savings Bank, takes that 50 million, carves it into increments of 250 to get under that FDIC cap, and loans that 50 million out to individual banks that participate in this network of banks through that product. On Monday, we had a call after the news broke about Silicon Valley Bank and the second bank, Signature Bank, on Monday. We had a call with our contact at Newtown Savings Bank, and we were assured that we had no exposure to neither of those banks, and that was the good news. Fast forward to this afternoon, they actually retracked, and they determined that we did have one increment of $250,000 at Silicon Valley Bank. Fortunately, since it's FDIC insured, FDIC has already credited our account, so it's kind of a moot point. And in addition, for the interest that we didn't earn on that $250 on Friday, Saturday, Sunday, the bank, Newtown Savings Bank, is going to credit us that $100. So, long and short of it, we have no exposure to any of these banks. We also had a call this morning with Union Savings Bank, and our money, 30 million, is actually invested in a different type of product called repo. It's not insured through the FDIC, however, it's fully collateralized with highly rated fixed income securities that we take possession of. So long story short, we're clear as far as we know, and we're monitoring the situation. So perfect, thank you.
All right, Marcia.
Thank you, John, for buying me some time.
Marcia, before you go any further, Marcia, before you go any...
The 4.5 projection that I had in my mind is for the rest of this year. Next year, the interest rate we were projecting was 4%, not 4.5.
All right, but we can turn it the way Ryan sort of was wanting. So that 287,000 number that we put in, that was based on $200,000 of extra revenue, of interest revenue, when we first talked about this. So now go to revenue since we're there now.
All right, this 287 was a number of different things, yeah.
There was 87,000 left over from the cash capital items that we put in. It was 200,000 from extra revenue. So if we take that, because you had told me 200,000 was extra, you were going to figure out putting in extra interest to revenue. So go to revenue, let's backtrack that 287 to revenue. What do you have in on the revenue line for interest revenue?
So the interest revenue is based on 4%. The extra that we were talking about, the 250, is in this line down here, miscellaneous. We were figuring it was 50,000, although not guaranteed. We normally get money from Kerma and a few other little things.
Yeah.
And then the 200,000 was revenue from someplace, but we didn't know where yet. So that's where the 200,000 shows up here.
All right.
The 200,000 that you're thinking of over here, we had talked about the pockets of money, and
Yeah, we only had 87,000 left over, so that's why we added in the 200,000 from extra revenues to cover that. That's how we got to that 287 number. That number's...
But that's extra revenue from this fiscal year that was going to cover it. Yes. So this 200,000 is extra revenue from this fiscal year. This is extra revenue that we're projecting because we don't want to be too conservative from next fiscal year.
And that number's backed up also. Go back to the revenue number, just so we had another conversation. The building department thinks they're gonna get how much extra revenue above the 310?
They had talked approximately 150. I can pull up that email from 2 properties on Park Street that are new since he gave me his revenue projections. And then there's 350 for another project that has been promised for a lot of years. It hasn't come in. And I wonder if we not put it in, because 350,000, if it doesn't come in, is a huge hole. That do we increase the miscellaneous revenue instead? But
So-
instead of 200,000, do we make it 300,000 or something like that?
So that 250,000, 50,000 of it's Kerma, 200,000 we said we're gonna get from somewhere. So now we say 150,000 of that could come from the building department. That leaves us with 50,000 that could come in. Do we want to increase that number, leave that number? What do you want to do with
I
that
would
number?
think for buildings, we would want, I would say we would put more money here. I'll look up the exact amount, but it's approximately 150 from the 2 that he's sure about. And then the one that could be or couldn't be.
Leave that out. Take that out of the equation. Leave that out. Don't even muddy the
Okay.
waters.
Okay.
Right? I mean,
Yeah.
go ahead, Dan.
So are we still looking to try to, what are we trying to do here?
I'm just making sure the numbers
Yeah,
are not
okay.
double dipping.
Right.
I wanted to make sure everything
Right.
that we're accounting for, that we're not double accounting for.
Yeah, yeah.
So.
Are we still looking for that $100,000 of?
We still have
FEMA?
110,000 of FEMA money that you can utilize somewhere.
What if we lowered 275 to 250?
Or 275.
The fuel, I mean, if you, the delta that you were gonna cover with
You could.
reserve.
You could do
Yeah,
that.
yeah. I mean, just keep the same delta. You're gonna cover 275 versus 330. Now, just cover the 286 with the same difference and lower the budget amount there.
This one half does, that's right. It's
Yeah.
fuel, because it could be down next year anyway, so.
Does that make sense, Marcia?
I was trying to follow what he's saying, and I didn't quite follow what he's saying.
No, I didn't say it. Dan
That was
said
Dan.
it. So Dan was talking this time.
I was going back to the $110,000 that we were trying to find a home for. And
Yeah.
if we just, before we were saying we were gonna cover use the fuel reserve prior to locking in, the delta was we were gonna budget at 275 and we were assuming like 330 or something, I think, and that was what we were gonna use some of that 375 for. Now that we're locking in at 286, take the same difference between the 330 and 270 and use a lower number as the, like call the fuel baseline for 24, 250, as opposed to 275, for instance.
I'm not quite following.
All he's saying is,
complicated.
you leave the 375 in the same hole that we had it in.
Yeah.
And all we're doing is reducing the baseline from $2.75 a gallon to $2.50
There
a
you go.
gallon. So our delta now is gonna be 36 cents a gallon.
All right, so then up here, that I'm going to reduce these figures a little bit. Okay, I got you. So that saves us, it doesn't save us a full 110, but it saves us a little bit, and I can pull that worksheet up.
We could do the same side, though. The school's gonna be the big driver, if you did that with the school.
Are we still
Yeah,
going
the
back to
school.
operating line items though?
Yeah, we are. This is just to get us to the footprint.
Okay.
All right, so if I were to pull that up, let me just. And it's not letting me open it.
You know what, that's okay, we could do that, you could do that offline. That's not a,
Okay,
that's not a big
yeah,
deal.
so this, it may be like double this number here. So
Yeah,
on
that's
our
fine.
side, we might be talking another 20,000, 20 to 25,000.
So back, now we should be under 4 though. Go to the summary.
Three, because we added the revenue, yep.
What are you at?
383.
Okay. So now let's,
Let me just make sure that I don't have those fake numbers down here. No, I took those out.
okay, so let's now start line by line. We're at a base point, right?
Yep.
And the base is what? Where, what's the mill rate?
3.83.
3.83 base.
Thank you. Okay.
So start at the top, right?
Start at the top, all right.
All right. So on the line item 51618, do we have the non-union wages? Do we have anybody hired yet for your assistant?
Ginny's coming back. I'll be confirming that at 7:30 tomorrow morning.
Forever? No, I'm asking the question.
I don't know, right?
She
I
may,
don't know
she's
right now.
reconsidering coming back.
She'll start on Monday if she is coming back temporarily, which I need to
She's
go eyeball
guaranteed
with
us through
her.
the fiscal year.
But she can't come back for the whole year because she's retired,
She
so
can-
she's got an hours issue there.
We know. She would be.
We will
if
adhere
she-
to the new policy.
Correct.
So what does that do to that budget line? If she can't work all the hours, that number's gotta go down. There's no way working the full hours. Because what was the thing, up to 1,500 hours, so that's only
Right.
3/4 of the time, so it's
Right.
gotta go down
No,
20.
she's gonna make a decision. and-
But even if she says full-time, she's gonna unretire,
Correct.
and
She's
then
gonna-
she'd go to
She
full-time.
stops her pension and she comes back full-time.
I don't know what to do. Well, we won't know about until Monday.
No, you won't know until probably May, maybe even June.
What do we do with that info?
Okay. Here's what we do with that info. All right. I looked at your salary study really in depth and really broke it down, and this was probably a good point to talk a few points about it. So Fern, would you mind coming to the table?
Sure.
Please. So in looking at this, the person who did this study included New Canaan, Darien, Brookfield, Fairfield, Monroe, New Fairfield, Newtown, New Milford, Ridgefield, Weston, Westport, and Wilton. Now, trying to get into this, those towns, where do you think they rank in the per capita income compared to us? So we're trying to figure out a baseline here of what's apples to apples. Those towns that were chosen, where do you think they fill into the...
A few are lower and most are much higher.
Right, so we're comparing against Darien, which has a median household income of $243K, Westport $222K, Weston $207,000, Wilton $204,000, New Canaan $200,000, Ridgefield $152,000, New Fairfield $140,000, Newtown $125,000, Monroe $121,000. Brookfield comes in at 117. So 6 or 5 of your towns, or not your towns, the study's
this
towns,
wasn't-
no,
yeah.
not yours, I apologize,
Yep.
make double the income that Brookfield makes.
Are they all Fairfield County?
Yeah, but they're double the
this
statistics. This is
our-
CCM data.
I understand. This is our COG. This is our.
Well, no, let's break it down even farther. Let's bring it down to our towns that are more in our area. Newtown, Monroe, Brookfield, New Fairfield, and New Milford.
And Richfield.
Bethel.
Richfield,
Bethel.
forget Richfield, they're like number 9 in the state in revenue. So if people wanna go to Richfield, they're always gonna go to Richfield. We can't be the highest paid, so if you break it down, the summary of the breakdown is 75% of our staff are above average paid against those towns. They're way above average, and some of them are 20% above average of the towns that I know Luke talked about. From your study, this is your data, not mine. At average is 7%, and below average is 6% of our employees, based on the study. But like your admin, if you just take your admin and you take the area towns, the admin, if we take, and this is what we're trying to figure out in this, how to get it all right, is, the admin salary that we have in place right now is 25% higher than the average of the area towns.
So how did it get there?
30
This-
years of experience.
I don't know how they get there, I'm just trying to say, these are the numbers that we're trying to figure out in this budget process, and getting everybody's salary right, and figuring it all out. If we can't be the highest paid, and we are the highest paid in a lot of these areas, we can't be the highest paid in every
So
category.
a lot of other mayors and first selectmen have other staff as well.
Absolutely, New Milford has 4, but we're still higher paid with the 2 positions that you have compared to the 4 that they have.
Well, they also have a grant writer and other things, and maybe their benefits are different, maybe they have different packages. I mean, it's, again, it's not
Correct,
apples
but
to
that's
apples.
what this, and that was part of when I said the salary study's missing a lot of things, and you came back and said, what's it missing? You wrote me an email saying, Glenn, I don't understand what's missing. Those are the points that are missing, but if we take it based on the numbers, that admin position that we're looking to budget for, if Ginny doesn't take it, is 24.85% higher than all the area towns. That's a big number difference. So this is where, when we're looking at the budget, and Ginny just brought a whole new play into the game, so that's a
Yeah.
whole different thing. So, but this is where we're trying to say is, if we're 25% higher, we have an opportunity for an open position. Gee, if we were to take that line item and say, to move that line item down $20,000 to the average, or whatever, no, the average, I'm sorry, not 20,000, $10 an hour is the average, move it down. We can then supplement the other ones that are under,
I will not support that. There's no way.
so we're gonna be the highest paid in the whole area. Everybody's gonna be the highest paid. Brookfield is also the lowest in population
So
of
let's
every
compare to New
town.
Milford for a second, because you said there were 4 other positions that support the mayor, and all of those combined is less than what this executive assistant makes?
The 3 of them are, really, the grant writer is something else, but yes, New Milford, the mayor makes 80,000, you make 120.
Not now, they just went through this process, and they've increased all their salaries, so I don't know what
Yeah,
numbers.
the
you're
numbers
looking
that you have may not be the accurate numbers.
When did they do that? Because I took it off their budget.
at. They
Yeah.
solidified it like 3 weeks ago, a month ago, maybe?
Yeah.
Have
they
they
did it.
voted it in?
I don't
That's
know
not
where they are
voted
the
in, because I'm
process.
taking it right off their budget. I'm going right into their town budget that the voters
They just
passed.
went through the same process.
And where'd they
But
get the
theirs is
money?
a 2-step. They're doing it in a 2-step. So they're giving the increases this year coming up, and then in the following year.
That's been approved?
That's what I was told.
I have,
Well,
I
then
have a
they-
question.
That's what the HR told me.
I have a question regarding the administrative assistant. So, this, administrative as Eileen mentioned, has a lot of experience. So, do we go out and actually see what the market? Because obviously, with somebody with 30 years' experience, is worth a lot more than
Well,
somebody.
that's not
with 20.
necessarily true.
Yeah,
Newtowns is
It
3 to
is.
5 years
That's how it works.
experience, and they're
Right?
paying them.
Now, have you been in this position and had to work for a full 15 months with the person who steers the ship here? This is a 2-year term for the position I'm
No,
currently in.
I
It
get
could
it.
turn over every 2 years, essentially.
Yep.
That person is the conduit for every single thing that happens in this town at this echelon.
Yeah, but the
And-
job description
Is
is administrative
Newtown
assistant,
different?
not a chief
Newtown
of staff,
has-
which I mean, I get what you're saying, like, this person, maybe the town needs a chief of staff, right? I get that point, but this job description is an executive assistant, not chief of staff. So like, that's where my argument is, if it's just an executive
Well, as I
assistant,
went through
should
the-
be what the market pays, not what.
When I went through the last round of interviews, when Ginny's replacement was hired, those were conversations I was having with each and every single candidate. It's to, look, Ginny could do this job with her eyes closed, there's no denying that, and she was worth every single penny the town paid her.
Correct.
as would be any other person who comes and can make that position their own. Ginny made it her own because she has been here for so long. That's where the experience came from. People would need to dive in head first, own it. Yes, they potentially could come with some experience. In fact, some of the candidates I have interviewed have worked in other municipalities at senior levels in that capacity. But nobody has worked for 34 years in a
Right.
municipal job.
But then why did her replacement, who didn't have that experience, get hired in $15,000 to $20,000 more than that job description across other towns? I mean, that's,
I wasn't
you
comparing
gain
it to
your
other towns, I was
experience.
comparing it to what that person brought to the forefront, which was experience,
It's a lot,
education,
and it's a lot. It's a lot of work. We've had two people,
and it was also $3,000 less than where Ginny's salary was.
it's a lot of work. We've had two people quit.
I have no doubt.
The
That is a
executive
lot.
assistant in Newtown makes 70,000 with 5 years worth of experience. So why would we bring in someone with 0 experience at 75? You can't tell me.
Who's
You
saying
can't.
they're gonna have
New-
0 experience? We don't know.
We've already brought in 2 that had 0 experience of being your administrative and carrying the ball.
Right, but they brought in other experiences that
But not
count
the one we're
towards that.
describing, not the one that she described
Well,
sitting here
they
at the
have the
table.
tools to do the job.
But then you get pay raises.
Okay,
I
so
think my-
they have the tools to do the job, good. 70,000, Newtown has 28,000 population, we have 17,000 population.
But-
So break down the numbers, you can't tell me that Newtown doesn't handle more phone calls in a day than Brookfield handles, just by the sheer
It's
numbers
not just
alone.
phone calls, Glenn, there's a lot to this
What?
job.
And Newtown doesn't have a different situation.
I
than
can't speak for Newtown. I'm telling you about Brookfield and what I've experienced in the last 15 months sitting in this seat. And this office cannot survive without someone who can hold down the fort. Period.
It's
All right,
very hard when you're comparing, it's easy to
And
say.
the salary study is no good, if you're telling me that. These numbers are no good. You just made an argument that none of these numbers mean anything, because you're saying it's such different.
I don't know what Newtown has. I mean, I could text Dan
No,
Rosenthal
no,
right
I'm
now
talking
and
about
see,
the numbers
do
in
you
the
have other
salary
staff
study.
that supports
So
you on a
nothing.
daily basis? He'll probably say yes. This person, that person, the other person.
So
I
what-
can't say that here.
I think the only
Right now,
thing-
I have nobody.
I think the only thing I just wanted to add, while we're all going back and forth and throw it in there, is one of the things that, I don't run, I'm not municipal, but in the business that I run, my concern is always hiring at the top of the pay scale, because if they're new and they're learning, and yes, Ginny had 30 years, she made the job her own, and I have no doubt the job is difficult. But do we need to consider just being careful with where we start, because we want that person to be able to stay, make the job their own, and be able to grow within a budget season. If we hire at the very top, it can't grow.
Who
So-
says we're hiring at the top?
I'm
We
just
have a
saying
range
with,
right
with
now.
this, no,
Your range is at the top of
but,
every other
but the
town.
department requests is at the top, so I'm thinking,
And
is it
so
better
is
to
Marcia.
go down a little bit so there's room to grow within that
Marcia
position?
has 30 years of experience and is one of the best in the state. So
She's
you-
also the only office that has a part-timer in town.
And two of her people are actually less than the 20% underpaid. So if you really look at the numbers,
The-
don't
the
throw
union-
Marcia into
the
the
union.
argument.
You're
You
telling
can't
me that I'm
compare.
hiring at the high end, I'm using that as another example of where we've hired at the high end compared to other towns.
I don't.
And I really don't like talking about the employees of this town by name, I don't think it's fair.
No, we're not going to. I'm good. I know my suggestion would be cut that down to 60,000 and put 15,000 in contingency.
I am not in support of that at all.
You don't have to be, actually. That's our decision at this point. So I think that's one of the things we need to talk about, is move that position to 60,000 and put 15,000 in contingency. So if Ginny comes back, we can support it through an appropriation. And if not,
So you would be putting the money aside only for Ginny?
we do put in the money aside for experience possibilities or anything like that. But I mean,
That's not their
we
decision.
don't know.
No, it's not. If you read the charter, I am responsible for the hiring and firing.
I think
I
we're
don't think you can
responsible
set
for each line
salaries.
item by the charter. We can reduce each line item by the charter. That's our budget to do by charter, so I think we can reduce a line item. And based on we're not reducing the whole line item, we're moving it into, because based on the numbers from your salary study, that job is a $60,000 a year job, $65,000 a year job. So we would still be able to cover the
That
extra.
salary study, as you pointed out several times, is not all inclusive, which is why we're suggesting not spending the $20,000 on a study and maybe hiring a consultant at $100 an hour to fill the data that you're looking for, because you're saying it's not a conclusive study. So you can't go off of the
So-
study if you're the one who's saying that the evidence isn't, it's not a complete picture.
So let's take the validity of the study then a little bit farther, if that's the way you want to go with the argument or the discussion. In your salary study, it says here that the New Milford Town Assessor makes, and this is where I'm baffled, I'll be honest with you, $112,631. If you go to their budget, their approved town budget, that assessor makes $105,060.
That's right.
This is their line item budget from the website that
The
was
numbers
printed.
that you
So
received were from
basically, New
from the
Milford's
towns
budget
themselves.
that's online is wrong then. That the town of New Milford's approved budget, the numbers that are online are wrong, that the town of New Milford's operating to a budget other than the approved budget? Is that what you're saying?
I don't know what the New Milford assessor makes.
I don't either, but I know
I
that.
do right here from the budget.
Was that last year approved?
Yeah, this is the last,
Okay.
we're still in this
Like I said, they
budget.
just underwent a new salary study and they're,
And the numbers that were
adopting it.
given to that consultant are the numbers that are now.
is New Milford on that list that you've got?
Yes, they are.
So New Milford, you're saying that New Milford, right now, their budget online that was approved by the town voters
For
is
last
not
year.
wrong, not right.
I'm
Last
not
year.
saying that.
No, this is the current operating budget. This current operating budget, the salary is less than what the study
That
says.
may be where they are today, Glenn, what they adopted, yes, I'm sure that's accurate, but they, like I just said, they have undergone a comprehensive salary study, and they're gonna be, if they haven't adopted it already, I don't know, they're gonna build it in according to.
It's built,
current.
as of July 1st, it's built in for over a
If it gets
two-year
approved in
period.
their
So
budget, I
they're
guess.
doing the increases
So are these
this year
numbers
and
July 1st numbers that are in this study that they're gonna be proposed, or are these numbers current numbers?
Those are proposed for July 1st.
Said 2023.
Well, I mean, if their budget didn't pass and it had to go back to be redone.
They're also
so
bonding 10 million for roads, New Milford, so I mean, to
But-
follow that suit.
I think we do need to be
All
careful
right,
about
all right,
what
yep,
we're
all
talking
right.
about. 'Cause it's-
And then they're gonna do another increase next year, so they realize that they're really behind, so they're trying to make up for it. But they couldn't do it all in 1 year, so they're doing it over a 2-year period.
How did they do that? Do you know salaries? Did they do a study themselves?
They did it, they did similar to like what was done, and then they kind of, you know, it's hard because our, like our benefits, for instance, we contribute anywhere from 18 to 20%. They only could contribute 5%. So, you know, you have to look at that too. And that, you know, to Glenn's point, you know, the apples to apples, the same thing with job descriptions. What, you know, Tara's administrative or executive secretary does versus what Newtown does, I guarantee you, is not the same. So that's where we run into the problems. And you know, from outside, it's easy to look in and say, oh, well, you know, the executive secretary here makes this, this, and this. But if you look at each one of them and what they're doing totally different things.
And why didn't we do the salary study that was approved from last year's budget? Because that's what that was intended to do, was to provide a comparison to make it apples to apples by
Correct.
looking, but
And
that wasn't done.
No, it wasn't done because we found out that they were doing the survey and we thought we would piggyback on it. And the agreement was, she said, any additional information that you want, like benefits and all that kind of stuff, she was willing to do for $95 an hour, additional. Which I thought was a good deal. She can grow off of this and get any information that you guys want.
So after the referendum, Eileen, when the budget was approved and it got dumped into the Board of Finance's line item, you know, the salary study,
You
to
told
be
us to
honest,
stop.
between June and the time we found out about this one that was being done, it didn't happen for various reasons. And quite frankly, I'm glad that it didn't, because we would have spent $20,000, like the library spent $30,000 on a pile of information that,
And they could, you know, they can do additional towns, so what they can do is they can block off. So if you just wanted to do the neighboring towns, she could focus just on those towns and then go deep diving into the benefits. How much do they contribute to their pension plan? You know, stuff like that. How many personal days do they get? How many vacation days do they get? And just so you guys know, they're doing this throughout the state of Connecticut. We're not the only ones. I am constantly, I sent Glenn one form that I got regarding vacation days. Someone is doing a sick day. We're trying to all compile this information so that we're all competitive, because basically what's going to happen is, you know, we're going to lose people who are going to go to these other towns to make more money. Plus, the other problem that we have is you have a tax, assessor, you have a tax collector, a town clerk, which is elected, but these are specialized fields. There are no tax assessors out there. Right now, it's the same thing that we had with the sanitarian problem. People are paying top dollar to get these people in. I mean, we're very fortunate. We have very good people who have a lot of experience, and that's kind of why I want the salary survey. I want to be able to say, when I hire someone, you know, say hypothetically we start at 100, that I have a range from 100 to 150, so that someone coming in with no experience, yes, we start them at the lower level, but somebody who has 20 years, I can say, yeah, come on in, we can pay you 140, 145. We don't have that now, and that's what I'm looking for out of the salary survey, to have a range, to walk away with a range and say, okay, right now what we've done, and what we've done in the last 9 years, is we just pretty much replace people for the price that they leave, because that's what you have to pay. And some people I can't pay because I don't have enough money to pay them. So it's really a tricky, and it's a bad market right now, you know what I mean? And that's why Ridgefield is stealing all of our people, because they have the money to do it.
And we're on the low end of the overall annual % increase.
Correct.
We're in the bottom 4, I think, out of 40 towns.
And I also gave that was another survey that I was able to have, where I showed Glenn, with our % increase, there again, you know, we're lower than everyone else. So it's hard. I can honestly tell you that the people in this building work very hard, and they're dedicated people, and I honestly don't want to lose any of them, and I want to pay them what they're worth. And honestly, that question is a hard question, what someone is worth, what value they bring. And you know, you guys don't see them, you don't work with them, so you don't know. And I think it's really hard when you're looking from the outside in to really justify these things.
I just think, to that point, I agree with you. I think having a study is so helpful to get that data.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, what is someone worth? What is the market willing to pay for? Now, I know in business it's different, in municipalities it's different, right? If Richfield's willing to pay somebody, maybe New Milford's willing to pay somebody, it's good for, because I think it's just bad optics when it's like, okay, this person leaves, all right, we're paying them the same amount of money. We're paying somebody that's 2 years out of school and replacing someone that had a 30 years worth of experience. It's just not, it's not the right use of town money. So I think that hopefully this data that you're asking for, that's what you need.
Yeah, I agree. And that's something I've been wanting for years.
That's all, I think.
You know, this isn't me just coming, this is me for the last, 7 years saying, I'm gonna lose our best people.
Right.
And, and if you're desperate and, say we needed, God forbid, one of our, tax assessor, I'm just using as a hypothetical, if she, someone loses a tax assessor, you need a tax assessor. You're gonna pay whatever, and Tara will be coming here saying, I need 20 more grand to get a tax assessor, just like the sanitarian position. To a certain extent, we don't have control of those numbers, because if you need somebody and it's a position you have to have, guess what? You're gonna pay anything to get that person in. So I just wanna be competitive. I wanna, but I wanna look further than just across the board. Oh, well, Newtown and this title, and, Ridgefield and this title. No, look at the extra stuff that they're doing. And I think that's more important, because what our people do here is not necessarily what's going on in Newtown or Ridgefield or Bethel or any of the towns. And like I said, in the 9 years I've been here, I have to tell you right now, our staff is the best we've ever had. And I just think they're not appreciated or valued as much as they should be. Because I know, you know, what they do every day and in and out. And I think unless you're in this building and see everything that goes on, it's hard to gauge it. You know what I mean? It's hard. But Ginny's job, I will tell you, is one of the hardest jobs in this building. And she does navigate what goes on and the things and keeping track. It's a lot of work. And, you know, the two people that we had in were qualified people as far as having the ability. Yes, they didn't know the job, but they knew more than bringing someone from outside. And they hit the door running. So this job is a tough job, and it's going to entail a lot of work, and it's going to entail a lot of time. And, you know, I think Steve Dunn made that argument when he came before you guys to get the additional money, you know, bringing that, all that to your attention, the amount of work. And I don't even think Tara realized it until she walked through the door, just that position, how important it really, really is.
Then what do you propose for that position number? How are we gonna handle that as a budget item?
So it's gonna depend on what happens.
I think I
That's with the increase for the new fiscal year, right, the 76,688.
I feel like it's a really dumb question, but I'm gonna ask it. I'm gonna put myself out there because it's a dumb I feel like it's a dumb question. It's gonna come out and it's probably gonna be one of those, but that's fine.
No, there's no dumb question.
She just said that too. So, doesn't matter what position. If you've got it in the budget and it's a line item for X amount of dollars, right? But we're gonna start, get somebody in, you really like them, they're not as experienced as that X amount last person who left was, but they're good, so we get them in at a different rate. Where in the difference, so you get that in at a different rate than what, you know, is in the budget, where are you gonna put that difference? Do you say, oh, okay, so we didn't spend that difference, we could put it to a, you know, a different position, we could put it to a position that we're having trouble getting hired because we're not paying enough?
Sure.
Is that a dumb question?
No.
Okay, because it was confusing me, because I'm trying to look and go, how does that really work?
I
It's like,
liken this whole process to the teacher turnover. I mean, when the experienced teachers retire because they're on steps and they have certain
Right.
pay grades,
Right.
oftentimes they're bringing in a newer teacher, not always, but sometimes they're bringing in a newer
And they're at a
teacher
different
on
step.
at a lower, and then there's the extra money that was
it
saved
just
from
hangs
that.
out there.
Yeah,
And
I
then
mean,
you
this
put
school
it
works
towards-
differently because they're not line item managed.
Got it.
From our side, but it's the same concept.
But, right, and similar, I'm sure, we as a board don't say, okay, well, since you saved X amount of dollars on that one position, that gets to go. But would we know in an effect to try to assist to get, I don't really know.
Like
It's
that.
not,
I think
it's
I'm
not
just
entirely
I think
analogous
I'm
because,
just a dumb
because for
question.
somebody like a sanitarian, or whatever,
Yeah.
there's a qualification and there's
Right,
a floor
right,
as opposed
yeah.
to going back to square. You're
Right,
not, you're not
no, I
hiring
get
somebody
that.
straight, so
Yeah.
it's not
No, I
entirely
don't
analogous.
necessarily
Right, yeah.
go from the top
Yeah.
to the bottom, but, you know,
Yeah.
the qualifications
Yeah.
and 15 years of experience
Uh-huh.
might come in differently as qualifications and 2 years of experience.
Absolutely.
But I guess the more I talk it out, you're not gonna know, so you have to just kind of make an assumption that the number's gonna wind up somewhere, and you're gonna hope that that number works
But
out.
hopefully if we have a study, a salary study, you got a range, and then you have that range, and
We
That's
have
what
a
I want,
range. We
you
have a
know.
range.
But the range,
Yeah, we do.
do you put,
It was
what
70
range do you
was
put
it
in the
70,
budget?
76
I guess
or
that
something
circles
like
back to,
that?
what range do you put in the budget?
I mean, if you want to put
Right.
the lowest range in, probably I would say 70 would be the lowest.
In any, I'm not talking about one certain
And I
position,
think
I just
that's
wanted to be
originally how
fair.
we started the conversation.
Yeah.
Maybe I was
I
a
mean,
little
that-
low,
that's-
but 70,000 and put the rest
70,
in a contingency.
Correct, I agree.
That's what we talked about starting off.
Yeah,
I
but
was
you
a
were
little
at
low.
60.
Yeah, okay, I can step back from
Yeah.
that. But I'm saying from
No, I
that,
agree with you. I think 70 is reasonable. And then if Ginny does come back, and that
then
would be
it
a
becomes,
wonderful thing.
you put it right back to where
Put
she
it right
was.
back in, yeah, I agree.
Are some of
Yeah,
these
I mean, there may
positions-
be a Ginny clone out there somewhere if Ginny doesn't do it, so then what?
The money's still there. That's how we start this
Yeah,
conversation. The money's still there.
We're looking at the low end. They want to look at the low end right now.
All of our
We're
budgeting
still
process, Tara, even with the Board of Ed, is take it from the low end and work from there. Everybody can't be high-end budgeting, because if everybody has a high-end budget, Then we get to a point where you got 4,000 left in that account, the Board of Ed has 8,000 left in that account, this guy's got 20,000 left in his account, and all of a sudden, we got $300,000 of money that we didn't budget for. Yeah, I know, not a problem, but when you start talking about
Taxpayers gonna pay extra.
Well,
passing a
that's-
budget at 3.8 or going over 4, now you're talking about,
But if a budget doesn't pass, we're right back here trying to,
I just
then
think,
we're
I just
going
think
lower.
when it comes to human capital, we're not looking at this the right way. Because first of all, in many cases, we're not commensurate with what the market's calling for. And as we all know, the price of everything is going up, including what people can bring to the table.
right,
People have a lot of value to contribute, but you have to pay them appropriately.
in every business that way, but
And
every
it's gonna
business,
continue to get worse.
every business has hard
This is
decisions to
something that
make.
hasn't been
If you-
addressed in the town.
So can I just say one
It's
thing?
been addressed in the town from
Well-
the point of 80% of our people are above average paid compared to our area towns. 80%.
It doesn't account for all the factors
Yeah,
as
there's
to
a lot of
why they're
factors that
paying the way they
we,
do.
we need to do a salary survey so that we can do apples to apples. Otherwise, it's really,
I
So-
agreed.
You know,
I think that's what we all agree on.
And
Yeah.
the numbers from the Milford are the proposed numbers.
Correct.
So they
Correct.
have to, this isn't
It
in
hasn't
play
been
right
done.
now. This hasn't
Right.
gone through. And the mayor's increased his salary by 20,000.
New
He's
Milford's
got,
not in our county, I'm just saying.
but New
It's
Milford's in our
next-
driving range. If
and-
someone's gonna get a job.
Fair
if
enough,
if
but
I'm sitting
it's
at New Milford
different.
making 50,000 as the admin to the mayor, I might consider making 70,000 to drive 7
But
miles.
to your point,
To come.
we pulled a new employee from New Milford, we also pulled another employee from Litchfield County, who were both wonderful hires, good job on that. But we have to think about those.
We
'cause
got
that's-
very lucky.
well,
Those skills
well,
are
but
hard to
yeah,
find.
I get that, and Richfield got very lucky by taking some of our people. But this is gonna be the natural occurrence. My wife's a teacher, she went down county to make more money. That's what people do, they go down county to make more money, and people down, up county will come down here to make more. That's what happens, it just, so we have to look at everything. We can't just look down in Richfield and compare. It's not fair to the taxpayers. Oh, let's see what Westport pays. Let's be Westport. We have a 20% increase. We can't do that. We have to look at all different counties. We really have to. Because we could pull from New Milford, we could pull from, and we have.
so I've been here 9 years and we have never evaluated the salary. So you come here and every year, all you get is that annual increase, be it 2.2%, 2 point. No one ever gets a penny more. Now, that's not normal in a normal business. If you come to, I was corporate for 12 years, okay? I started at the bottom like everybody else, but I was able to work myself all the way up to being one of the highest paid HRs in my district. But I did that because there were metrics and I could get to that point. We don't have that opportunity here. So when you're hired into the town here, what you make, you are never gonna make any more than that annual increase that you're gonna get. The numbers never change. That's the problem.
One of
But
the first things I wanted to do was an evaluation program when I walked in the door, and I realized 30 seconds later that that's near to impossible, because
Well, I guess also the point to that is, if we're bringing a replacement and paying the same amount of money, you started them at that scale and you're not gonna have room to grow. So if you actually brought in somebody that's a little bit lower,
Can't.
you would have that.
You can't,
Well,
that's the problem.
I get on some of the.
You have no idea
I
how
get on
hard
some of the roles, but like,
it is to
an
compete.
admin is not the same as a sanitarian, that's what I'm trying to say. There's positions in this, where you could basically, it's a different level, right? I mean, there's not a requirement, right?
some of the positions are union and they're locked in an envelope for the next 3 years
So-
as well.
Right.
And
It's
there's
different.
disparities there
Yep.
that also need to be addressed.
Right.
Let's, all right,
It's a big, it's
think about it.
Yeah.
Where do you wanna go with that?
Yeah.
We'll talk about that tomorrow.
and as far as decreasing that number, I'd like to know what you're gonna do in other areas for some of the other positions, not to mention the fact that there's next priority forms in here, and it's gonna come up again next year. Some of these are written by the employees themselves, where they don't feel they're being compensated appropriately.
We can all say that.
I just wanted to remind you of the next priority forms that are
I
authored by
understand
employees
that, but I mean,
themselves.
we could all say that. I mean, anybody sitting in this table could say that. I mean,
Yeah.
easily. I just signed a contract, made my boss $10 million. one deal, 10 million in his pocket, so should I get a cut of that? Should I get paid $500,000? I'm worth it if I brought him in, or 500, for 5 million, I'm worth it, I brought it in, so every employee's gonna feel that way. It's what we can afford, it's what can be afforded. You know, you can't just say, we're gonna keep giving money and be at the top end, at the top end, at the top end. And every employee's gonna say, I want more money. Who's gonna say, I don't want less? Who's gonna say, I'm overpaid? Who's gonna come in here and say, you know what, Dara, I make 140,000, but I think we should make it 110 because you know what, the workload has gone down a little bit.
And the crux of what you just said is what can we afford? And that's across the board for all of this, for every single thing in here. And we're contemplating spending money in areas where it's not investing in human capital. It's investing in these pies in the sky when we should be concentrating on the people who actually make this town tick. It's a well-oiled machine with the folks that we have in this building and in other buildings.
What are the pie in the sky?
Like not knowing if we're gonna be able to build a new library / community center in 2030.
But we often get feedback from people, we hear it across the board, is that, you know, a smaller percentage of our town is the children, and that's the biggest chunk of our budget. But we have to also meet the needs of the rest of the members of the community, which is what a community center, library type of investment does.
And we need resources here as well to service those people, so it's.
I don't see any asks for any, I mean, at this point, there was a couple asks for additional positions, but there's no asks for raises or anything like that, so I don't know where we're going with this, cause like,
Well,
I mean, if you wanna.
he's looking at shaving a salary here, you know, what.
That's a new position, that's
Yeah.
bringing it in a lower position, just like Eileen brought up the thing that when we get rid of a teacher at $100,000, we bring in one at 60,000, and they work their way up over time to get to that 100,000, and then it's a vicious cycle of, again, if you found someone with Ginny's experience, that's 28 years, that's a whole nother ballgame. But we're saying, it's in every industry, you bring in someone, a manager at a low level, and gee, they work up to being a director, and the director works up to being a vice president. But when the vice president leaves, I don't bring in the new manager at the vice president level, I bring them in the manager level, and they grow up into the positions.
But we don't do that, Glenn, that's the problem. We never give increases. So if I've been here for 9 years, I have not gotten any increase except for when I was hired up to the percent increases. That's what I'm saying.
But
So it's very difficult.
Respectfully,
Yeah.
that argument doesn't hold water, and I'm not gonna say, and I'm just gonna say the HR position right now in Brookfield is still one of the higher paid ones, so you got to that position somehow, to the point of.
Do you have any idea what I do?
No, I'll
That's
be honest with
exactly
you. Hold on, but.
That's my point. You don't know what each person brings to the table in this building
But
to
also.
be judging what they're making.
Yes, in fairness, yes. But I've done enough research on other towns too, to the point of, this pie can't be that different. It can't be totally 180 different, the functions of each town.
It could be. That's where you're wrong. It could be.
Okay, so you're saying it could be,
Mm-hmm.
but you're the one asking for these increases and saying we're being unfair, so wouldn't you be able to tell me it is, or, because this could be.
It's position to position. I'm not saying that all of our positions are underpaid. I've never said that.
So let's go to HR, because I've done a little
Okay,
work
you
on
wanna-
that.
Go ahead.
So
We can talk
HR
about
in
it.
Brookfield.
Yep.
Is your position and an assistant. I'm for a healthy argument. And Newtown does it for 90,000. What's
Okay.
different in Newtown?
I think we should have an executive session on this. I think we should.
All right, I apologize. All right, we'll move on. I apologize. You're right.
But
Sorry.
I can actually have a discussion with you
All
on
right.
that, if you would like, or with any member of the board.
All
I'd be
right.
more than happy to explain my value to the town.
I'm not asking for your value. I'm just saying I'm just using it as a position, not you as a person.
Or
No, how
what
no
I
way.
do that's different than other HRs.
It was the position. It
Yes,
wasn't
I'd be
you.
more than
By
happy,
no
'cause-
way it was a
Because I do
person.
other things that other HRs don't do.
Could
One
we-
of them
you know,
being
I think.
administering of a
I
pension.
have a point. I think the point that Glenn's trying to make is we're not here to judge what people do. We're not here. I think we need data, right? So if you're asking me, or if you're asking us, we need to pay this person. Well, I think we need to have the data come to us. Well, here's why. We have to pay this person this amount of money because New Milford's paying this, Brookfield's paying this, Richfield's paying this, plus this person's doing this, this, and this. We don't see that, right? So when you start seeing, oh, we need $40,000 more, $30,000 more, whatever the case, they do a lot. Well, what do they do? We're not in this building, right?
Right.
Tara obviously is a shareholder here. She runs the town.
Yep.
She sees it. We don't see it. So I think that's where it'll get us more comfortable
I think
if
we're all
there's
speaking the
data.
same language.
Why,
I think we're all
why is
saying
there
the
so
same
much
thing, just different.
scrutiny now
It's not
versus
scrutiny.
previous years? I mean,
You don't think we had this argument
Oh,
with
this-
Steve?
we have
I'll
every year.
replay-
That's why I'm silent.
Replay the
the
video.
first thing he told me was I should pay the land use director $15,000 more.
Replay the video.
Like, who's that?
Replay the video of me and Steve.
Over and
Please
over.
go back and replay the video where he threw the pizza box.
Look,
Okay,
look,
so-
let me
So you can drop it.
Pizza.
We used to order pizza.
So-
That's my argument.
Not anymore.
Well, I have to
You know,
tomorrow.
in fairness, you know, how
Did we do the town
your
board?
employees
Yes,
come to you. You
That's
don't
what
think
Joyce
we
said.
get phone
We don't
calls, or I
like
get
that. I
phone
know.
calls saying, why are people making so much at the town hall? Why are they? Because they're town employees, they got a great pension, they got great health
I
benefits.
know, everybody thinks we don't have
Everybody-
fake jobs. I'm the first one to tell you that.
So then we have to pass this budget to the taxpayers who are voting on this. So unless we scrutinize on these numbers and we say, gee, okay, we're gonna do this and we're gonna do that, the voters ultimately decide, not the six of us at this table. So they get, the phone calls that I take all the time are, my God, they get paid so much at the town hall. They're not in a private thing. They got great pensions. Their benefits are awesome. They get a lot of sick days. They get more vacation time than all of us. I want to work at the town. You know, and I always say, go apply. That's always my job, to go apply.
Sure,
It's
of course.
open. So what you hear from your side is a lot different than what I hear on my side.
Absolutely, oh, I know that.
And
We
that's a
can,
two-way street.
yeah, we can argue all day and night about this,
Right,
but
right.
like I said, the one thing
In
that
all departments.
Exactly. I just,
Right.
I'm
And-
just here,
That a study needs to be
Yeah,
done.
and right, we got to the study because when we were at this table 3 years ago and 4 years ago and 5 years ago, there were one-off salary increases. And
Yes,
every
that's
year
correct.
there were 3 and 4 people, we gotta give this person more, that person. We said, wait a second, we agree we need to compensate people properly, let's do a study, and it still hasn't happened. So to say that nobody has gotten outsized increases isn't true, because there were 2 or 3 people every year for
And
the
two of
first
them
3.
left.
Yeah.
and,
We
but
gave
they,
them
So-
20,000 and they
so-
left us empty.
That we can either,
Right.
we can either do the one-offs, we reward this, the people based on the recommendations of the managers, or we do the study across the board and right-size everybody, but.
I'd rather do the study across the board.
I
and
don't
right
like
side
the idea
everyone.
of spending $20,000 on it when we have a baseline
This
that we can
baseline's-
build
no,
off
no,
of.
no.
It's gonna
Because
take, a
again,
lot of it's gonna have to get redone.
This baseline, Tara, realistically, I'm serious, you got proposed numbers in there that haven't even been passed, so how do you even use that as a baseline?
Well, that's why I was asking, what is it that you wanna study? I mean, we're gonna do a study to do what?
I think we outlined it in the RFP, and I think,
And I can give that information to her.
but her
I've seen that
information,
RFP.
you know, the towns that she used, number one, I gotta tell you, it's just like, if I'm the president of Newtown Savings Bank, I wanna compare my salary to the president of Citigroup, because, I mean, that's the numbers we're talking
Well,
about
the other-
here, we're not talking the area towns.
The other thing you mentioned though is the job descriptions aren't the same. So if the job descriptions aren't the same, we need to have job descriptions to compare the two.
We do have
We
job
do have job
descriptions.
descriptions.
But you also talk,
In there, that shows every job description versus the other towns, or no?
No,
That's what
no,
I'm saying, so
but-
we need to compare job descriptions, because when we come to you and we say we're overpaid, well, they don't do as, we do more than that. Well, we need to quantify that, that data's gotta be there, that's what I think a study would be, that would be helpful, that's what's missing in that study.
you gave an example of New Milford, like we contribute more to the benefits than other towns. That's part of the compensation package too, and that too would need to be
Right.
included in a salary study so that you're.
I mean, we're contributing 20% for insurance, and New Milford's 5,
Okay.
and Ridgefield is $50.
Right.
I
So
mean,
that
so-
alone is worth a few $1,000s of
That's what-
salary. So to say, an example, and not, no numbers here, say the position A is 70,000 to Milford, the position at Brookfield is 70,000, or, yeah, you know what I'm talking, 70,000. There's a difference in that 70,000. Those 70,000s aren't equal.
No, I agree.
And that's what
And
the
that,
salary
and that's the
study-
things that you need to take into consideration. Same thing with contributions to the pension plan. We give 5% of our pay. Some towns only give 2. You know, so these are all the numbers
Right.
that are behind.
And the sick
that-
days.
And the sick days, the same thing. You guys probably don't even realize, we don't have short-term disability. Other towns give short-term disability.
Correct, but we have 24 days of sick
We
leave.
have to, but
24
we have
days.
to accumulate our sick time to get enough for 90 days to cover us for short-term disability. So, God forbid, if I needed a surgery, and I had to be out for a couple of months, like Marcia, for instance, is out, she's using her sick time that she has accumulated. So when you come on board and you're new, most companies have short-term disability, correct? We don't. So God forbid, 3 months in, you get sick,
We was paid for that.
yeah,
That
you
was
know.
always out of my paycheck.
So that's what you have that option to, we don't have that option.
I
All right,
think
fair enough.
Better
So,
than getting
I'm just saying, I
Fair
can, I
enough.
can argue back and forth, I don't wanna do that.
Yeah.
I just wanna get it right.
All right, so let's go on to
Yeah.
the next. Marcia, go down to, let's go through the line items, because let's finish off, let's do another 20 minutes here and get down through.
Okay,
So we got off the beaten trail.
Rabbit hole.
All right, so, go down through, all right, we bypassed that, the admin position. Where are you going, Marcia? Slow down on me.
I mean, if you wanna take that down to 70, see what happens.
That's fair. I would be okay with
But
that.
this is the position we're in, like, you know, scrambling for $5,000 to paint the police department.
We're not gonna scramble, we're gonna be, at the end, it's all gonna wash in the end. It's just a matter of getting numbers right so we can backfill everything else, that's all.
so leave it.
Leave it there for now. Overtime wages, there's nothing. Other pay stayed the same, right? Not a big deal. Specific outside postage is basically the same. Travel and conferences went up $1,000 in travel and conferences. I was assume there was backup data to that, right? I mean,
Well,
it's
I
in the
tried to
book.
build that back to the year, to make it more commensurate with the year prior. And hotels have gone up. I mean, I paid out of pocket last year for several events that I attended because I cut the budget so thin last year, so that was.
All right, so I mean, do you have any discussion on that, team?
It's fine.
It's fine, all right, keep going down. So then the selectmen's budget, we're just gonna have one line item we're gonna talk about tomorrow, if we think about it with calmer heads, is that number there. That could highlight that area. The rest of that is good. So on to the Board of Finance. The $1,000 that came out of there was money that wasn't used by Diane, or by the secretary, right? That, Marcia, that was your suggestion?
That's correct.
So-
And we'll need more if we do a lot of budget votes, but we, in our history, we haven't used that in the last 4 years.
All right, so then let's leave that. So the Board of Finance is set.
She has a lot of experience, right?
So we'll move,
She worked in the same, right?
what are we on to now? The Finance Department?
Yeah.
I had a question on the overtime on your 51630 line.
Yes.
You reduced that, right?
I reduced the number of hours that, it's dependent on the projects, and a lot of the overtime is dependent on how Munis changes when we do 1099s and W-2s. But we hadn't been using it, so I did reduce that.
All right, so going through her department, everything else didn't really change, right? There's minimal changes?
That's correct.
Anybody have
Last
any?
year, travel and conferences were cut. I put those back in because those are valuable. And I tried to take the money out of office supplies and department-specific supplies, things like checks and stuff, because we haven't, again, trying to go back with history.
All right, and
So does she need
travel and
900?
conferences?
Do you need $900 back in travel and conferences? 1,000, I mean, sorry.
I didn't put the whole thing back because we hadn't been using the whole thing. I just put some of it back.
so you're comfortable with those numbers?
Yes, I am.
Gone, move on. Assessors?
Wait, what come with that?
Nothing but back, she was comfortable with it.
She's comfortable with it.
You're okay
Yeah,
with
Yeah,
that?
she's
she was
okay
fine
with
with it.
With 900 is fine?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
The assessors, I had a couple questions on the department-specific outside services, and you answered it. That's the motor vehicle, 5,000 of that is for the motor vehicle auditor, that we are gonna hopefully gain revenue on a program that Tara implemented, the 50% thing, so I think that number's okay. And the other one was to get new people certified on the travel and conferences in the assessor's office, the 55800 line, right? You added in there? Or not you added in, department head added in? So I don't see anything there that stands out. Any questions from you guys that really stands out? It's pretty minimal movements from prior year, right? Dan, you good?
Yep.
All right, assessor's done. Board of Assessment Appeals, I didn't have any questions on that. Anybody have questions? That's pretty minimal too,
Yeah.
right? You're talking $2,000, right?
Yeah.
All right. Tax collector, I had a question on the seasonal and sporadic numbers. That was a big change. Go to seasonal sporadic. It went from 2,000 to 4,500, right? And Marcia, I think that we had an incident there, and she's trying to figure out how to handle her department. The tax collector, we had a personnel.
Yes.
Yes, just leave it at that, and
Yeah.
she needed more to cover that,
Yes.
to get through her issues.
And another example of trying to bring it back to the year over last.
Yeah. So I mean, that number's large, but that was, she's gotta catch up with
Yes.
the issue of, we'll discuss offline. Everybody okay with that?
Yep.
All right. Everything else in that department was, pretty low. I mean, the travel and conferences, we gotten away from getting certifications and conferences because of COVID, right? So we gotta catch up a little bit on that. Each department is gonna have that, I'm sure. Right, to catch up.
And we have a new employee in there that needs to take classes.
Yep. So, all right. So I'm good with the tax collector. Everybody else good? All right. On to legal. Okay. Now, we had a conversation on the tax litigation, right, Marcia?
Yes, I talked to the assessor about that today, that there's a few cases that will continue into next fiscal year from last year's reval. There's only one new case from this year. I said, well, would 5,000 cover it? She said she would, she thinks we would need about half of what we had this year. And this year we had 45,000 encumbered from last year and 10 in the current year, so that's 55. So we could bring it down to 25 or 27.5. But just knowing that if something blows up, she may need more money from contingency.
Yep. So you all okay with that move as a group? Dan?
Mm-hmm.
All right, on the other legal fees, do we want to reduce some of them and move it to contingency, or how do you want to handle that? I mean, it was 36, 50, 51, 59 is where it's at now. I mean,
Other legal fees, the note says estimated SALY, what is that?
SALY, it's same as last year.
Oh, thank you, sorry.
And where are we on budget to actual?
For legal, we are still within budget for all of legal.
the retainer's the retainer. That's
Yep.
60,000, so that line's a rock line.
Yep. And who has authority to make phone calls and rack up fees outside of the retainer?
It's all supposed to be routed through department heads through me.
Okay.
Now, it doesn't always happen
I
that way.
wasn't gonna ask that, but.
But nothing is perfect. sometimes it is better that way, depending on the scenario.
I think that's for town attorney. I think labor and pension don't go through Tara.
No.
So on the labor, while I'm looking up some other things, on the labor side of that, do we have any contracts in play this year? Is there any upcoming contracts?
No.
Not until 24.
Why is the pension attorney up?
It's actually down,
It's down.
They brought it
down
to
3,000.
equal.
It's below as a quote, actually.
Oh, hold on. I'm looking at the notebook.
That's below as quote.
Like I said, they brought it back down.
So let's go to the 53020 line.
Okay.
Why do we go up 8,000 there from prior years? Or same as last year, right? Where we stand on that number this year, because it was 51 prior year to that, it was 50, prior year to that, it was 36. So what did we use out of the 59 up to date, and where do we stand?
Okay.
Almost 10:30, I think.
So right now, we're still working on this because we're meeting with the boards next week. And when we look at legal, what happens is we still use purchase orders. Every time there's a case that opens, for example, in land use, we do $2,500 on a purchase order. So if we were to look at legal, we're going to look at this 59,000. We've spent 43 so far, so we have 15 that we haven't spent. We've got 77 that is encumbered, so we have 77 that is free. But again, if there's a lawsuit, we go through and say, okay, what do you think it'll be? I just have to remind the departments every once in a while to look at that 77. Is it still good? Should it be higher? Should it be lower? But right now, from what we know, we're coming in at 52. Does that make sense?
Yep. So that's the land use bucket, that is,
Tax
departments.
tax collections, or issues outside of, what we can charge the taxpayers for. But most of it is, land use, a few other minor lawsuits here and there.
Dan, you're sitting there in front of the numbers.
$50 sounds like a good number.
Okay, Ryan?
I like this, it's 51,793 next to it. Gives us back to last year, or 2 years ago. But 50's fine for me too.
That was also COVID year. I don't know what was happening across town then, but I'm now trying to remember why we brought it to 59 from that year. Maybe because we knew it was reval.
Reval's under the tax litigation number, which only has one case pending currently. So that's why we were able to reduce that line by 25,000, because she had extra money.
Why did we bring it up last year?
Brianna?
I was gonna go with the 52.
That's
She
what we're
said we were
at.
sitting at 70. I think we're all, because she said we were sitting at the 7,700, so I was thinking
Right.
52.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, Marcia said we're gonna be at 52, I was like, oh, 52,
It's
sounds
worth the
good.
52 then, put it in.
Staff.
The best we know right now. I'm not saying that's.
I know.
All right.
So So let's go back on the labor side of this, we're 5837, 4030. So that's gone down considerably.
It went up 10,000 in the 23 year because of a one-time fee. So so that's why it was 40 and it went down to 30. Yes, and these other years had contracts and pension stuff in them.
And what's a general contract cost us to negotiate? What's the rough bill?
Depends on which union it is.
I can understand that, rough bill.
I couldn't even guess. It depends. I think that this next round, we're gonna have a lot of issues because of wages.
That's the 24 round.
Correct. Not this year, next year. But I don't think it's gonna affect this year.
So what could we say this year compared to that, so we brace for next year?
I wish I had a crystal ball.
Well, we all do, we wouldn't be sitting here on the
But
beach.
you guys are the numbers people, not me.
Hmm?
Repairs are still out, are they still?
No,
So
that's
some
not
totally
ours.
different- okay,
That's
got
not,
it,
that's,
theirs.
this
That
is just
doesn't
the
mean-
town
got
side.
it,
This
got it,
is
got it.
just,
So nothing's really out right now.
all right, highlight that line, we'll think about it. So we can move on here. Pension attorney was less.
As far as this year to date, for legal, labor, we've spent, and HR does their encumbrances, they encumber the whole thing as opposed to case by case. So we've only spent 16,000 so far on legal for labor.
So then,
And we've spent
so we can go down to
700.
25 then, we can go down to, and pension, yeah, but you said the estimate, the quote for the pension was what, 29? What was the quote for the pension?
The pension attorney told Fern to put 30 in. Tara cut it to the same as last year. We've spent 7 so far.
So if you move the 30,000 down 5 to 25. And you move the other line down to 20. All right. Everybody good now?
Mm-hmm.
All right. On to personnel. I don't think I had enough questions.
If there's any room to build back a little bit that I cut last year for their, what line is it, Fern? I cut some team building morale stuff that.
Was that in personnel? Yeah.
That one.
Thank
What
you.
line? What line is it?
53910.
What'd you
Although
cut?
we never spent the whole line.
Hmm. I don't think.
It went up?
Yeah.
What did I cut, Fern?
I don't see a cut.
I think it was a cut from the request.
Yeah.
Hmm.
That's what it was.
Oh, is that how I
Off
did
a
it?
lot.
All right. No, I mean, I don't have any issues with any of that. Did any of y'all have an issue?
Nope.
Personnel's done. To the people listening, if you're still listening, you're gonna watch this, we've gone through these numbers at random at home. We've gone through these numbers individually. We've had conversations individually on these numbers. So this isn't just the 30-second flyby. This is something that we've been studying now since we've got it. So, IT,
And you have 650 pages of detail that make up every line.
correct. All right. On the IT side, I think we all realize Dan's burden. I think we need to look at, like we've talked about, consolidation and figuring out how to make it work for everybody before we get a position in there. I know it's needed. I get it's needed. From this is my point of view. So let the board will talk about it. Is I understand the need, but I think listening to the part-time, you know, my initial thing is this an area we'd like to have the town side and the school side to see if they could consolidate, devise a plan to make our entire group run more efficiently. We all see the need to add something here to aid in the workload, and we'd like to see a plan to put forward to get it right instead of band-aiding things. So why can't we add more into the sporadic wages and not do a part-time position? So if we added in on your sporadic range, where's the sporadic? If we added in, say, 10,000 there, because it used to be done at what, $20 an hour, I believe, in the
That
old
sporadic
days?
one, if I could say, that sporadic one was for what I'm sitting here doing now, meeting recording.
And just so everybody knows, Dan was sick all day today and he's here, so.
No, we
I mean,
appreciate
and the fact that we don't have a backup is really detrimental to the business running.
And Eric did step up on Monday when Dan wasn't feeling well, sorry Dan, but the cybersecurity came in to evaluate the registrars and all the equipment.
They called me on the phone while he was with them, yeah.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
But that's part of getting it right, the department right. I think,
I don't think that's something that's gonna happen overnight, to be honest
Eric,
with you.
yeah.
it would be,
We need analysis behind that and a game plan to move
Yeah,
forward.
I mean, that's not something that's gonna happen this year. And
no, it's not gonna happen this year.
Yeah,
We
and I
gotta
just-
start to get the ball rolling, or
Yeah.
it'll never happen. And if we
Mhm.
keep band-aiding it, we're
I
gonna
agree.
band-aid it to death, in my opinion.
Yeah. no,
So Dan, your thoughts, how, you're just first in front of the numbers.
No, that's fine, that's fine. This is the hardest one of the entire season for me. And I sympathize with Dan's presentation and the work and all that, but the solution it didn't seem that the solution was gonna ease the burden for the price that was being paid. So I wanna ease the burden, but I don't think that's the solution, so I couldn't get there.
What is the solution?
I don't know, but hiring a part-time person, and Dan said straight out that the first 6 months is gonna be, you know, walking that person around. I'm not, you know, trying to disparage anything. Dan is wonderful. But I don't know that a part-time person is going to ease the burden while we try to figure out the broader picture.
Can I say something?
Of course.
I disagree.
Uh-huh.
And
Well, I mean-
Dan is a great guy, and he's very shy, and he's never gonna ask for help. So I am going to, on his behalf, I've known Dan for a long time, and he will never tell you he's overburdened or he's overworked, or if he's sick, he's gonna be there when I call him. He needs help, and he needs help for somebody like at nights like this when somebody else could be doing it. When I'm having a problem getting into my computer, and I need just somebody that has a little bit more technical experience than I do. A lot of the things that Dan does, unfortunately, is little things. And if we had somebody here part-time, that could take the burden off of him during the day or at night. I don't want to burn this guy out. And, you know, as it is, he's significantly underpaid, and Glenn, I'm sure you've looked at the numbers, he is.
Yes.
He needs help.
But I also don't know if a part-time person at 37,000 is gonna fix that. Like, I agree.
Oh,
I
it'll
think
help.
Dan
It'll
does.
help.
But I don't, but then when we were having the discussion, there didn't seem to be, would that person be enough of a help? Would they be enough of an assistance? Would they know enough to do what you're talking about, the little nuances that Dan can do? I don't necessarily know if you are gonna find a part-time person that's gonna step in and aid him and help him be efficient and help everybody for this amount of money. And that's my, and I'm not talking about, I'm literally saying, I'm gonna completely, I think everyone's gonna think I'm completely have lost my mind, but I don't think it's enough. That's what I'm saying. I actually, I question whether
I
it's
agree.
enough, because an entry level IT guy is full-time is 65. How are you gonna find a part-time that's gonna help you, Dan? When I blew up your cell phone, when I emailed you, I had Diane call you because I was panicking about my YouTube. How are you gonna find somebody for $37,000 that's gonna help you? I don't agree. I don't think it's enough. And I know if I'm outvoted, it's fine, I don't think it's enough. I think it's,
Listen,
I'm just saying, I
with you.
don't know
I
if
don't
this is the
disagree.
solution. And I'm not saying, but I don't know what the solution is. I just don't know if hiring a part-time person is enough.
Well, they had 2 full-times.
They're,
So
okay.
what happened there? I mean, again, why?
So, and I can give you the
You know,
history.
I'm just, I'm
I
not
can
sure
give you
if
the
it's
history
enough.
of that.
No, you
So-
can't, really. You
Why not?
can't, Fern, you can't, because there was conversations probably that were held that you weren't privy to, that you can't give the whole story.
Can I
to.
tell you what I was told?
Okay.
I can tell you that I was told that we were going to hire another person, but that we were gonna see how Dan did on his own, and at a minimum, bring someone in part-time, at a minimum.
Yeah.
And if not, then full-time.
But all I've been hearing all night is how hard it is to find somebody, so I guess my question goes back to how hard is it going to be to find somebody
I
part-time?
won't know unless
to-
I try.
Yeah, I mean, if we're gonna go that route, then it might be worth trying to find somebody part-time. I mean, it could be an ideal job for,
A retired person.
Or-
You know where
Yeah.
I'm getting at, I just am like, everything that's been going, I just don't, if we're not gonna be able to get, like you were talking about, you know, merging and you were saying that's really super far off and all these, like, these discussions we were talking about just now and getting, I just don't know if it's enough, so I'm not saying no.
So,
I'm just saying I don't know if this is the solution and can we do better? Can we have a better solution to make this more efficient, to make this better? Think outside of the box.
I'd be willing to try to get somebody with that rate, and then if not, I would come back to you and explain to you that you were right, that I can't find somebody at this. But to do nothing is not fair. It's truly not fair.
I think it needs to, it was hard to, we didn't clearly hear what the tasks would be that a part-time person would take on. I mean, we know that Dan is a jack of all trades, there's a lot of things that he does, and he's here, there, and everywhere supporting 60 users. And I think, you know, maybe it needs to be that specific tasks are defined, that will be the role of that person
Correct.
versus trying to clone Dan and
Right,
have.
and that would depend on the person we hire and what their capabilities are and what they could take off of Dan's plate. But to not hire anyone is really unfair.
But would that number fall into sporadic?
Yeah,
basis?
like
is it
you're
10%
talking
within-
about, like, is it?
See, I hear the unfair, and then I say though that without a plan, we're throwing money into something that
Right.
we're not getting
Yeah.
extreme value. We offered Dan a couple of options.
His
We offered
operating
Dan,
tempo is unsustainable. He cannot sustain this operational tempo. I can't say explicitly what Dan does, but I know after his presentation, I said, Dan, you know how Aaron had that sheet that said, I do all these things, and there were words on paper that we couldn't even read because there were so many of them? He didn't even have time to create that slide.
In fact, Erin said to
Which
him when
is-
he walked out, next year I'm gonna do your
all
presentation.
the more to have a plan, because all I heard
Yeah.
too was in the presentation was, by the time he trains them and all of this stuff, we're doing circles and we have someone trained that might leave anyway, without a plan, from a point of view, is, we're not gonna get it right if we Band-Aid this.
We're not Band-Aiding it, we're gonna get some.
And what is Dan gonna get rid of? Again, in his presentation, when we asked a lot of questions in fairness, Dan says, I don't like to give up ownership of that. I really don't want to give up that either. And I don't want to give that
Like I
up.
said though, it depends on what we get to start with. If we get somebody
Right.
straight out of college, they start with the basics. It evolves as they show their abilities. So if they show that they can fit tasks up quickly, give them more tasks.
YouTube meeting links, yes or no?
Yeah, exactly.
Kid out of
Like-
college.
Right.
Exactly. I
Great.
mean, YouTube meeting
Okay.
links, it would mean as long as we can trust
Checking
it.
a printer if it's not working.
Yeah.
Correct.
Getting this
Clearing
going.
a jam.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the
5
basic
nights
stuff.
in a row for 4
Right.
weeks in a row.
Okay.
Here's where I am. I keep hearing, we can't consolidate, we can't consolidate, we can't consolidate. Well, I can tell you, if I cut this, you're gonna wanna consolidate, and that's the only way we're gonna do
We
that.
didn't say we can't consolidate.
Well, I just keep
I've
hearing
been working on it
I-
for 15 months. I've had,
But-
Marcia can tell you, we've talked about it
But
ad
like, that, I
nauseam.
think that's the only way we're gonna consolidate, because I think, you know, if here 4 years from now, it's gonna be like, well, we didn't need to consolidate because we didn't need to. I think this is the way we consolidate, is we you know, this is a Band-Aid. I don't see this as a plan. And also, if we look at the line item, it wasn't requested. Tara threw this in. So this is not even a department request. To me, this is a firm no.
You have a department request in your binders.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There
we
are
do.
65,000 for,
That's
Yes.
must be.
Yes, no,
65,000
that's
for
a
a full-timer
department request.
is a
No, no,
request
no,
binder.
that was wrong. That's a
And
department.
whether I threw it in or not, I am here every day for hours on end, watching how this place functions.
No, and my
What
my,
he is doing right now is not sustainable.
understood. That's not my point. My point is we have 4 other IT people within under the town umbrella that can help out, and that's my point. We have economies of scale.
And I haven't talked to them.
Well,
If I may, though.
I will
this could
argue that
force-
they don't have the bandwidth
Ryan,
to do it
if I may,
either.
doing that consolidation, it's actually increasing the knowledge load on each side. We don't have exact parity with system to system, so they'd be learning new systems for each side. You know, even just the basics, Microsoft versus Google for their environments, new credentials, new passwords, new network equipment. You're basically adding to the job tasks on each side, at which point then it becomes back to, you know, what is the salary worth, what tasks you're putting on each person.
It's not that easy. I know you think it is combining, but it really isn't. It's the same thing like with HR. You're talking different unions, you're talking different policy. It's not
Yeah,
as
I mean,
easy as just saying,
well, we have 4,
let's
So
combine.
we have 4 people in the schools that are on Google. We have 1 person on Microsoft. My point would be, okay, we'd have 3 people on Google, 2 people on Microsoft, so we can share.
So that would be taken away from the schools since they'd have less staff on their side.
Yeah, but I get that, but there could be, I think the problem is, I think we just think of everything segmented here. It's gotta be more collective, because these are tight budgets, and we have to be tight. We all know, we don't wanna raise taxes where we don't need to, and we're, the Board of Ed really hasn't added anybody. We're starting to add positions here. I get we need something, but I think we need to see what do we have? What do we have that internally can we do before we add positions?
Except, and this one was, it's a position that was cut for 2 years. It had been a position that had been stable for 8 years before that. So the question then becomes, you know, why did we cut it then?
That's valid.
This is not sustainable, I'm telling you.
Where were those birds the other night?
I
needed that, Dan.
But like for instead, I mean, when the position was cut, I was told, oh, I will advocate for a part-timer.
Yeah.
Never was a part-timer then.
That's what we
that
were
was back
told.
during COVID.
That's exactly what we were told.
Again, I'm not saying I'm against it, I'm just, I wanna do it right. It's like, it's the same thing, I don't wanna Band-Aid it and I don't wanna make it worse on you. We should be making decisions at this table that are for the betterment of the town, for the employees here, for everybody. So it's not, like I said, I'm not against it, I'm just saying, is it enough and have we?
There are a lot of broader
Can't get
conversations that I
Yes.
can't get into detail on.
No,
A lot
I
of them evolve around security as well, and we haven't been able to get there, him and I, because, for a lot of reasons. But there's a lot of gaps across town that need a lot of attention regarding IT writ large, and we're not gonna be able to do it, him and I. He needs to be able to step back from some stuff and get after the harder, the gaps, the harder problems. And we've had a lot of new hires this year. It takes time to onboard people and get them up to speed and just, get whatever it is he does to get me set up. It probably took him
I'm
3
with you on
days
that,
just to get me going.
I'm not gonna lie, I'm with you on that. I think that's what I was mentally getting at, but my brain isn't working anymore.
Can't consolidate and a full-timer. We have 2 people, right? Sounds like there's a need. That's my.
Would you consider trying a part-timer and then next year if it wasn't, in other words?
I think that's another Band-Aid maneuver, to be honest. I think if you try a part-timer and it doesn't work, then you're back and we're having the same discussion again with more money. It's like if you're just gonna,
All right, let's.
but it might just be something we have to sleep on.
Think
You have
about
to
it.
do
Let's
something,
end it.
okay?
Let's close it down tonight.
That's all I ask.
Where
You
do
something.
we stand now, Marcia?
Ooh.
3.75.
All right, I'll make a motion to adjourn for tonight. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Marcia, can you send this to everybody at the board? So
Yes, I